And start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Preserve Squad Midweek Show, soccer podcast covering all things in the EPL from a bench perspective. I'm your host Ben, and we are now through week two, and some of the headlines are. I don't necessarily know if I need to go over the headlines. I'll just kind of just where we kick off. Where we kick off will be Liverpool ahead Newcastle, and it does end 3-2 in the most dramatic of fashions. This game seems to always be blockbuster for some reason. Uh, uh, First goals with Ryan Gravenberch and then Etikike bagged again. 2-0, it felt like this was probably done and dusted. At this point, Newcastle have had Anthony Gordon sent off, and we will be talking about that. But then Bruno Guimaraes does make it 2-1. And then William Usula comes on as like the only recognizable striker on the Newcastle team right now. And he gets a goal that just I don't necessarily say he deserves, but it definitely good for him and his career. It seems like Eddie Howe hasn't really used him much. Everyone knows about the Isak saga, and there's just no one else in the club. They've let Callum Wilson go. Usula's just been in the back foot. No one's really thought about him, and he comes in and gets a massive goal. And there, you thought because this happened in like the 88th minute, you thought that maybe that was going to be enough for a tie. There was 11 minutes though in extra time because of the injuries to Tonali and Joe Linton um, in that second half, and that allowed Liverpool just to create one more chance, and they only created like three in the entire game. But youngster off the bench, Rio Nugamura, 16-year-old wonder kid, and he had a finish that just made you not think that he was 16. And it was a really nice team goal by Liverpool as well. So that's kind of where we get started. The headlines again. Liverpool got away with the 3 points in the opening week just a week ago versus Bournemouth. I feel like they got away with this one as well. Can that be sustainable throughout the season? I that can be discussed later on. I mean, I was on cloud nine for both of these finishes, but that said, it is hard not to worry a little bit. It does feel the squad is a little thin until the January until the summer window closes. I'll give my take then on where I see most of these clubs, maybe finishing. Liverpool right now, I don't think they have enough to necessarily win a title. I guess I'll just kind of put it that way. At African Cup of Nations year as well, so you're going to lose Salah. It does feel even if you get Isak in, I feel like you could still be a little bit short at the back. So I've kind of spoken about that a little bit as well. Now, if you have youngsters that can step up, like Nugamura just showed, maybe that can kind of cover over some of the depth issues. Maybe they have some other gems in the cards. We have seen that in the past where Stefan Bacic, showed up for them a couple of seasons ago, and apparently he's back, so maybe he can offer something in midfield. There's Trey Nyoni, who showed that he could maybe step up a little bit in the preseason as well. And speaking of preseason, Nugamura did show up in the preseason. He scored 3 or 4 goals, so he's been talked about. But they've also been linked to bringing in a left winger because they sold Luis Diaz, and right now after Gakpo, you don't really know who the backup left winger is, if it's going to be the 16-year-old or not. Now he's about to turn 17, and that is basically what Yamin Yamal's age was, but that is a big step up for him. But I don't know. You've seen his finishes, and again, none of these have been tap-ins necessarily. He's got a good finish on him, and according to On his thought, he apparently is very very good in take-ons in 1v1. And when he came on, the first thing he did was look to isolate the Newcastle defender and took him on 1v1 and got a cross off. Something Liverpool were not doing. So that's kind of where we are with them. And then with Newcastle, it was all about Alexander Isak leading up to this. But just between these two clubs, there's been some kind of crazy history brewing over the years between both of them, where the fixture has been blockbuster. Just a year ago, at St James, there was the 3-3 game where Liverpool were losing, then they came back in the second half. It felt like Mo Salah had actually won it at the end, and then a late free kick where they allowed the goalie to just kind of hoof a ball into the area, and that was when Kelleher famously dropped it, and Newcastle were able to get a draw. Then uh, there was everyone knows that Newcastle are the EFL champions at Liverpool's expense because of last spring where Alexander Isak was got basically the game winning goal. uh, there was a couple of years or a couple of years even before that, before Liverpool played Barcelona. There was that crazy game where I think it was Divock Origi got a game winner, and that was the game that Salah basically got injured. So this Fisher continues uh, uh, continues to give back, I guess, I can say. It continues to be blockbuster. Another thing too is Liverpool can thank Newcastle for Wijnaldum, and Newcastle can maybe be thankful for Liverpool for taking Andy Carroll off them. So there's some history now between these two clubs, just kind of going into this. Getting to the starting 11, one of the kind of talking points was Jeremy Frimpong. Mentioned how Frimpong last week went off. Slot said he was worried, feeling a little tightness in his hamstring, and he's now out. He's maybe out till the international break, so he won't be available versus Arsenal either. People did not know what Liverpool were going to do. The talk about them, the whole leading up to this has been losing Alexander Arnold and bringing in a couple different fullbacks here. Kirkez instead of Robinson again. Kirkez had a moment where everyone would, I'll get to that. He had a moment on the Bruno Guimaraes goal, but otherwise he played pretty well. He rebounded well after that, but at the same time, I still don't realize I don't feel like they're using him the best way, and I'll maybe get to that a little bit later on. But yeah, no one really knew what they were going to do with Frimpong being out and Joe Gomez maybe not being fit enough to start, because it really is, and Connor Bradley maybe not necessarily being fully fit. What could you do? Now, last season we did see Curtis Jones used at right back for Everton, and then we saw it versus Fulham and didn't necessarily work too great versus Fulham. Uh, and Arne Slot went with Dominic Szoboszlai, and when I first saw the lineup, I loved it because I've really seen Szoboszlai as almost like the closest to Trent as far as being on the ball, and the closest as far as the physical gifts that Fede Valverde has shown for Real Madrid, and we've seen Valverde being able to play at right back transition and do fully fine. Actually, I think he's even better at that position than Alexander Arnold. Uh, and we when you saw when I first saw that, I was thinking of what maybe Szoboszlai could offer as far as maybe some delivery. Maybe he could get Salah involved more. Maybe he could link up a little bit better. And weirdly enough, this change worked because of his defensive attributes, which I wasn't really thinking about. I mean, he single handedly kept Liverpool in this game in the beginning. So that was a bit of a surprise to see. We have Ryan Gravenberch make his first start, and it was Jones kind of next to him. And Ryan Gravenberch, all he did was started with a goal. So we'll get to that, and then Wirtz a little bit in front of him, and then Salah Ekitike, and then Cody Gakpo, and then with Newcastle we have Trippier, Schär, Burn, Livramento, and it was interesting. Livramento, not necessarily Lewis Hall, and then Tonali, Bruno, Joelinton, probably what you'd expect, and then Alanga, Gordon, and Barnes. Not necessarily what you would expect, but it is basically what we saw versus Aston Villa. And again, no Isak. And Eddie Howe, for me, I didn't. It's hard to say because Eddie Howe really hasn't given Usola a chance. He didn't really give him much hope in the preseason. But to do this, you're sacrificing Harvey Barnes in his best, or Anthony Gordon in his best position, and it was very funny because maybe Eddie Howe just didn't realize that Szoboszlai was going to be the right back, but he had one of the reasons why Szoboszlai had no issues is Harvey Barnes had no ability to go past him, and Szoboszlai basically understood that Harvey Barnes was never going to try to get the ball onto his left foot to swing across, and he always wanted to go on his. He always wanted to cut inside and do one thing. He was able to get one cross off where Anthony Gordon did get a pretty good header, did force pretty decent Allison save in the first half, but for the most part, Harvey Barnes was very uh, non-impactful. And I was just wondering if Anthony Alanga had been playing on that side instead, and you could have played maybe Jacob Murphy on the other side. Maybe that could have made them a little bit more threatening, or you could have found a way to have Ursula played actually a striker, and then you could have played Gordon on his most dangerous side. But they didn't, and that's kind of just where Newcastle maybe screwed up a little bit. But kind of getting you to the match recap. All the talk online, coming into this was Newcastle going to be overly physical. I mean, there were jokes specifically about Joe Linton being a headhunter, and not even 2 minutes into the game, he nearly turks out Cody Gakpo's head on a try to swing at a loose ball after a corner kick. Trippier was throwing people to the ground. Tackles were flying in everywhere. It was very physical, and the ref was letting a lot of it go. It was an insane opening 20 minutes. Newcastle were really all over. The Liverpool could not get a touch on the ball. Possession was 80-20, is what the stat sheet said for that opening 20 minutes. And then Ryan Gravenberch on his first foul. I mean, it is a bad foul though. He gets an early yellow card for a bad challenge, and that's kind of your protective shield. And he's already on a yellow card, so that's not really great. And then Kanate picks up an early yellow as well. And one of the annoying things about that is right before that, Liverpool nearly break through Newcastle's press for like the first time in the game, thanks to a clever defending by Szoboszlai. He's able to do a back heel flick, and he finds Salah, and then Salah finds Ekitike. And Liverpool have a 4v2 situation here if Ekitike can get rid of the ball. But Dan Burn, to his credit, does do well to step up and block any kind of pass. Otherwise, Liverpool would have been in. Uh, Instead, Kanate had to basically stop Anthony Gordon from turning on him. And then a little bit after that, Allison had to sweep a keep. Otherwise, Olenka was going to get in behind. So, and the other thing to say is that opening 15 minutes or so, Elanga was getting by Kirkez like it wasn't like it was no like it was no issue. So scary opening 15, 20 minutes or so. Again, Liverpool suffocated without the ball, and they could not string any passes together. The other thing that was happening was Allison kept going long. Newcastle were pressing him pretty hard. Good pressing by Gordon, and they were going long. And then you've got Joe Linton in there, and it was just Ryan Gravenberch really, and Joe Linton and Tonali and Bruno Gomes as well. They were winning those headers. They were winning those 50-50. You had Dan Burn that was doing a very brave job to step up and to be kind of in the halfway area to challenge for those aerial duels. And he's like 6'7", and he was winning a lot of those as well. So when Liverpool were going long, it was not working. It's the closest thing that I've seen to when teams go long on Liverpool and you got Van Dijk back there. Not saying Dan Burn is Van Dijk, but at least in the aerial ability, equation, he kind of is. Uh, and so it was pointless to keep going long like that, and it took forever for Liverpool to not do that. It was really annoying how Allison wasn't even trying to hold on to the ball to try to kind of play through Newcastle pressing them a little bit. Now it is dangerous, and if one misplayed pass, and it basically does lead to a goal usually. So it's not easy to do that, but I was a little bit getting annoyed that that was at least not happening, and that was the reason why that opening 20 or so minutes was just absolute hell. And then so Newcastle were getting chances, and a lot of that danger was coming down their their right side, Liverpool's left, with Anthony Elanga getting behind Kirkes, and a couple really dangerous crosses he ripped in for some key defending. There was one moment where Dominic Szoboszlai is going, he's facing the goal, and he does a big flick that stops the ball, maybe reaching Anthony Gordon or whoever. It might have been Barnes. Someone was next to him, or maybe even Bruno. So that was really key. And then Szoboszlai made another key contribution later in the half to stop Gordon getting on a free cross. Otherwise, that could have been really bad as well. And then there was another moment where, back post defending, he did a good job to head the ball away and not head the ball into his own net. Szoboszlai was everywhere, and it was needed. Uh, so that's kind of where we're going. Uh, and then we get to where Liverpool, out of being fully outplayed and not even being competitive, these opening 25 minutes or so, Newcastle have a throw in, and it's Trippier. And maybe the one player that was not playing well that first half for Newcastle was Trippier. He was getting away with a lot of really dumb fouls. And then once Liverpool found a way, they still kept going long. But once Liverpool basically discovered, if you went long to Cody Gakpo, and not necessarily through the middle, if you targeted on the left, Gakpo's like 6'3", and you targeted Cody Gakpo versus Kieran Trippier. Trippier had no chance to win that aerial, and that's actually how Liverpool started to get up the field again. So it wasn't necessarily through some nice playmaking. They just decided to go that direction. Uh, and we did see that a little bit versus Bournemouth as well. So Cody Gakpo became a bit of the outlet, not necessarily through the middle or Salah. We'll see if that continues to be a trend or not. Liverpool do have Arsenal coming up, and maybe you could do the same versus Timber if Timber is played instead of Ben White. But anyways, Liverpool are able to get upfield and at least press Newcastle maybe into a turnover or the ball goes out of play, and it's a Newcastle throw in, and Trippier just basically throws the ball, gives the ball away, and Liverpool are able to get the ball there, and then. Curtis Jones basically lays it off to Ryan Gravenberch, and no one thinks Ryan Gravenberch is going to hit this. He didn't score last year, and he just has an insane hit. It's hit and hope, but it's hit with a lot of it's hit with intent. I guess I can say, and does catch Pope completely by surprise. There's a little deflection there, but I think it's going in no matter what. It's a thunder hit, and it's hard and low. It's hit from outside the box, so it's got a little distance to go, but. It goes through legs. Pope probably sees it a little bit late as well, so I think that's why it goes in with even without the deflection. But it also takes a nick to go in as well. And there you go, 1-0 that did not feel deserved, and there was nearly a chance for maybe 2-0 a little bit after that as well. So finally, Liverpool start to slow down a little bit. You start to. I don't know if necessarily it was after Newcastle had another chance or not, but all of a sudden you start to see Allison take all that 8 seconds or whatever to delay some restarts. Liverpool, you'll get the ball, and maybe after a throw in as well, and just Newcastle finally start to lay off a little bit. They're trying to block these passes to come into him, and instead Liverpool start to really take their time. And as the tactic, if you're not going to be pressed, and especially when you have the lead, it helps as well. Moving the ball side to side, especially if you're doing it quickly, is not the worst thing in the world, and you can kind of kill the game out a little bit. You can at least save some legs. You can make the crowd be annoyed. You can draw out the crowd that way as well. So it was a good tactic. And finally, Liverpool started to get more passes together. They started to get some touches. Started to, and I think there's almost a 5 minute stretch where they're doing this, and then Brian Gravenberch has that killer kind of forward pass that finds maybe Florian Wirtz, and that basically leads to a chance as well. And then there's nearly another moment for a 2-0, and it's a nice little counter. I think it starts maybe even from a goal kick or just an Allison restart. They're able to get up the field, and it's one of the few times where Salah and maybe Szoboszlai are able to maybe find each other. Uh, where Gakpo is able to get the ball again, and he basically dribbles through the midfield, and he finds Salah, and then Salah does a square pass into the box, and Curtis Jones just can't get any contact. If that was nearly a really really nice goal. Uh, but that was kind of where it felt like maybe Liverpool had retaken control, and then there's another moment as well, where we're now in like the 35th minute or so now at this point, and Salah's going for a 50-50 ball, and Dan Burn goes crazy high on Salah, catching him studs up on the leg, and he was given a yellow for that. But I feel like that should have been that was close to being bad. Uh, and That to me, looking back now, it's easier to do in hindsight because I know what happens after that. But I feel like there was enough of this where some of these challenges were reckless, and Dan Burn flying as high as he is, where he's not controllable in the air at all, and he catches Salah high in the leg. That should have been when Simon Hooper should have just held the game up, brought both captains together and said enough. Enough with the high challenges and dirty play. You made your point, but enough. And also, this is very weird because Newcastle are taking all of this out on Liverpool players. Liverpool players haven't done anything to them. Liverpool players basically gave them their title, last season by not playing that well in the final. So they were able to to get that experience of celebrating that title with their club last summer, and all Liverpool's club has done has inquired about Alexander Isak. It's not necessarily like I don't know. It was goofy how all of this is made into made it to be more than it was. It was more of a wrestling match or football match or rugby match than necessarily, soccer. So it was overly physical, and it was amazed no one had been hurt to this point. And then 30 seconds after this, we get to the red card, and it's again, Liverpool are very very lucky. This didn't end up worse than it was. Uh, mentioned how Anthony Gordon before was doing a very good job to run after, players with the ball, and he was chasing it. He was chasing it all half, but he starts chasing it like a madman here. He goes from basically one side of the field to the other, and he's charging at Allison, and then Allison finds Van Dyke, and he just runs at Van Dyke. Maybe Van Dyke's a little bit late to release it, but he is able to get rid of the ball before Gordon catches him, and Gordon just leaves his feet in a very uncontrollable, reckless manner. And maybe, people are saying he tried to pull out, but at the same time, once you've given yourself up, you can't really control where your momentum is taking you. And he's going so fast. And he doesn't necessarily catch him, studs up, but he basically goes right into Virgil van Dijk's plant foot. And the studs basically do catch the calf and bring down the shin guard, and you see it afterwards. You see uh, cleat marks all over Van Dyke's shin. That's just kind of the aesthetic thing, but it's amazing that nothing more happened other than that. Because again, Virgil van Dijk's foot is planted and he goes right into it. This could have been a leg snapper easily, because Virgil van Dijk, you think about it, he's kicking the ball away and he's got one foot on the ground after he's kicked it, and someone is colliding into that one foot. That could have been really, really bad. It was amazing to me there wasn't immediate red. It was only yellow, and then VAR kind of intervened. And before, the people on commentary were trying to defend it being just a caution, and I think that it's because Virgil Van Dijk was able to get up. This was not good, and yeah, it was a deserving send off, and now Newcastle are already short players, and now they're going to be without Anthony Gordon for at least 3 games. It's going to be that's disciplinary. So not good there either. And I do wonder, would that happen if Anthony Gordon is playing on the left, not necessarily a striker, or not? Anthony Gordon has that motivation to maybe play a little bit harder for Liverpool as well. Being that Everton player and also apparently being a Liverpool fan growing up. He always feels like he has something to prove versus Liverpool, and I don't know. I think the emotions and the crowd and all of the hoopla leading up to this maybe got the better of him, and he was gracious afterwards. But again, it's easy for me to be a little bit more gracious back, knowing that nothing serious happened to him because it's not that long ago. I do remember Pickford going into Van Dyke, and that being not just Van Dyke's or Liverpool season, Van Dyke's season. That could have been Van Dyke's career. This one could have been Van Dyke's career, had that been a really bad leg break. So, given his age, so thankfully nothing happened there. But that's just where we're at. And then the second half starts, and within 60 seconds of that, Liverpool make it 2-0, with Newcastle being down a man. So, this is a very good goal. It starts from a Newcastle kickoff, and they kick it. They just boot it away. But here Kanate wins the header and finds Salah. Salah finds Wirtz. Wirtz did not have the best game for the most part, but he does a very good job here to split, to have a thread, splitting ball through Newcastle players to find Ekihite. And then from there, Ugo does well to advance the ball upfield. He's shielding it the entire time. Tonali can't get near him. I mean, I've loved what I've seen from Ekitike so far. It's his link up ability. He knows where to go with the ball. He's quick with it. He's 6'3", but he shields the ball pretty well. He does feel like he has good lower body strength. He has good balance to him. He's not struggling with the physicality in the league, and as we see, here he's not struggling when it comes to ball striking either. Because what a hit this was! You know, he's able to shield it. He finds Gakpo. Gakpo cuts inside. Trippier allows it because he's worried about Kirkez overlapping. So it's one of the few times where they were able to get Kirkez to go upfield. And I feel like that's kind of been missing a little bit. We saw at Bournemouth, Kirkez was kind of the wing outlet to cross balls in, but Liverpool haven't always had had that number 9. You have Ekekite trying to do some things in midfield. So I feel like if Liverpool were to get Isak, I think you would get more of Kirkaz, and you think you would get more Kirkaz bombing upfield and doing what Andy Robertson has done all the years, bombing upfield and getting some dangerous crosses in where Isak would always be in the box. But anyways, we haven't necessarily seen that yet. We haven't seen the best of Kirkaz yet, but here, him offering that overlap basically allowed Gakpo to cut inside to get a shot off because Trippier has to worry about Kirkaz. Uh, the Gakpo shot is blocked, but Gakpo is able to get on it. Basically get on the rebound. He's able to touch it to Ekikite, and it's just an insane, tremendous technique to hit that as hard as he does, as low as he does, and he finds the corner. I mean, and that's not really savable either. And Newcastle down a man, you figured that would have been it. But right after, maybe 5 minutes or so, Newcastle are able to get a chance for a long throw in. That's at least defended, but the ball basically finds Livermento, and he just hoofs it into the box. And Kirkez, Bruno Guimaraes, just little man's Kirkez, and Kirkez maybe isn't as tall as maybe you would like to someone to defend the back post, but Kirkez also basically ducks. Kirkez did not have a bad game, but here was not necessarily great. But I can't necessarily. Robertson would have been better because Robertson's been dunked on as well. It's just kind of one of those things. I mean, it was an insane header by Bruno Guimaraes, and Bruno Guimaraes played an unreal game, even without the goal. He just felt like he was winning a lot of those duels. One of the reasons why that opening half was so hectic was he was Bruno was just kind of owning that midfield by himself. Uh, and so it gets to 2-1, and then the crowd, Newcastle crowd, gets back into it, and it felt like at that point Liverpool kind of shrunk a little bit, and they started to play not to lose, in my opinion. They never made the extra man count. They weren't really able to get chances. A couple of times they were able to play through a press or not, and then they'd maybe rush things a little bit. And what I mean by that is Salah would maybe cross the ball in when there wasn't really anyone in the box, and maybe a ball would go over Gakpo's head. Or Gakpo would do a cross and no one would be in the box, and vice versa. They kept messing up the final product where they weren't even asking Nick Pope questions. So that was a little bit annoying and unnerving too. And then Slot made some subs, which wasn't he's mentioned how he doesn't think Ekekite, because he didn't have the preseason, the full preseason. He's managing his minutes, and so he brings on Federico Chiesa, and this time it did not work because what was missing once he went off was the ability to contest kind of long balls didn't really work. One of the things that Eddie Howe did is he took off Trippier and he put Livramento on Gakpo to bring on Lewis Hall, and that was a really good change because Liverpool couldn't go long to Gakpo. Livramento was much better at contesting that, and then when Ekikite went off, Liverpool didn't really have an ability to just kind of do any kind of link up, any kind of hold up play because again, Dan Burn or Shar weren't really worried about Chiesa kind of turning on them, and they were being overly physical with him and just kind of pitching the ball off back him too. And it was Newcastle did very well. Down a man. They kind of dominated a little bit in that second half where maybe they shouldn't have. And then Slot took off Wirtz for kind of Bradley. This maybe was kind of the area that ended up costing them a little bit. Now I get the idea. The idea was to get Dominic Szoboszlai back in the midfield to maybe contest some of these duels because you are missing what he offers in that respect. Gravenberch was struggling because he and Kanate are usually the ones that are the biggest challengers at 50-50s. They're both on yellows. They couldn't be as aggressive as they would usually like. So you put Szoboszlai back in there, and to get Bradley, who actually is the right back, to get him on, so the change made sense, but it didn't work out. Bradley is caught upfield, losing the ball on a counter. He gets on the ball and he has 50 other options, and he holds on to it and gives it to Salah way too late, and then Salah gives it back to Bradley when Bradley is covered, and basically it leads to a turnover, and they don't want Newcastle to counter, so Bradley immediately tries to foul, and that leads to a Newcastle just being able to hoof the ball in again with Nick Pope. Uh, and Bradley hasn't played any kind of preseason or anything because he's been coming back from injury. He just looked like he wasn't up to speed a little bit. So that wasn't great. And we get to Eddie Howe's tactics were enough to just kind of keep them in the game. And anytime they were able to get a set piece, this is why the set piece was bad, is that allowed them to get Dan Burn, the 6'7" frame, and to basically make him their makeshift number 9 on any of these long throws or any of these restarts. And that's basically it works out for them. Liverpool have to deal with him, and they're able to kind of miss out on the others. And the other change he does is he brings on William Osula finally after Tenali and Joe Linton end up getting injured. So he brought on Jacob Ramsey as one of the changes, and I think he had to bring on the youngster Lewis Miley. They didn't necessarily contribute much there, but at least the big thing was getting the actual striker Usula back into the side, and it works out for them. Pope launches it long. Kanate just misjudges the bounce. Allison can't come out quickly enough, and the ball. Usula does a good job to just kind of get a touch with Allison coming at him. It's not an easy finish. He's able to get the right contact to direct it into the net, and then from there, you kind of figured maybe Newcastle are going to nick this because for the next 6 minutes, the ball just stayed in Liverpool's goal box. Corner kick after corner kick. Newcastle are doing everything to draw fouls and to get or trying to get a PK in the box. And thankfully, the ref wasn't really buying that. There was a moment actually earlier in the game as well where I thought Kanate got lucky not to get a second yellow or not even to get to be a send off either, because to me it seemed like Anthony Lango was going to get a touch to get by him, and Kanate just shoved him to the ground. So this was very unnerving, to say the least. And Newcastle kept getting all these corner kicks after it got into stoppage time, and the delivery was giving Allison fits. Dan Burn and Van Dyke was basically a Colossus 1v1 matchup. Burn was winning a couple, Van Dyke was winning a couple as well. Van Dyke was just brilliant for that game, and I don't think Liverpool get out of that without someone like Van Dyke to be honest. And he did a very good job in the first half where Newcastle had a breakaway at Tonali after Kanate maybe misjudged a ball. Tonali has a free run, and Van Dijk's able to just kind of do enough to where he's able to stop Tonali, and he's also able to stop the pass into Gordon, and Liverpool were able to get away with that one as well. So this wasn't going that great, and then Slot finally did. He just made a couple subs to maybe win the game. He brought on 2 attack-minded subs. He didn't just bring on defenders. I thought he was going to bring on Endo to just to rescue a point and get out of there. Because I was thinking the way that Newcastle are just hoofing balls in, and they're so physical and dominant. Also, it helped that Joe Linton wasn't in there anymore, or Tenali. So you kind of lost. It wasn't. It basically was just Dan Burn you had to worry about. If they had Newcastle had the full flight in there. If you had Isak in there, I would have worried a lot about this result. Uh, but after that, it did feel like I was surprised that we didn't see Endo maybe come on a little bit later or earlier on as someone to maybe offer some help as far as heading the balls out. But Slot, to his credit, did make some offensive minded subs. He brought on Harvey Elliott, and the joke about Elliott is he comes on versus tired legs. Uh, there's talks about him maybe leaving. I don't want that to happen because there are some times where you have 5 subs now. Uh, you have a lot of champion. You have lots of games on the schedule here. Um, Harvey Elliott was tired legs, whether or not it's in stoppage time or even just in second halves. When you need to have someone that understands where to go with the ball in the final third, he works, and he just the other thing I like about him is he gets the best out of Salah. I mean, his positioning immediately is to run outside, and that forces Salah to play closer to the goal, and Salah being on the touchline, which is weird because Harvey Elliott doesn't necessarily have a uh, a right foot to cross the ball. He's left-footed too, but he just understands positionally. And I just feel like Liverpool start to move the ball better. Newcastle have finally now they aren't able to just immediately press and win the ball back. Now they're forced to retreat, and now Liverpool for the final 5 minutes or whatever are able to just kind of control it at their pace, where they've got the ball in at the halfway line. They can decide when to attack, when to not. Liverpool are able to get their players advanced. Now they're able to find the extra man, and Kanate basically finds Elliot. Elliot one times this to Ryan Gravenberch, who does who really, really well to get the ball out of his feet quickly as well. Gets it to Bradley. Bradley finds Chiesa. Chiesa quickly gives it to Salah, and then Salah one times this with his right foot across the 6 yard line. And Dominic Soboschlei is there, and he dummies the ball. He lets it go past him. And he did this for Aston Villa last year, and it went to Darwin Núñez, and Darwin Núñez wasn't able to get it on target. Here, he leaves it to a kid, and you know, everyone's praising what Dominic Szoboszlai did here. If the kid missed it, it would have been. I think Szoboszlai would have gotten some stick a little bit here, despite being unbelievably good. Maybe if not for Van Dijk, maybe man of the match as well. But by doing that dummy and by also doing the run that he does, he brings the right back. He brings Livramento to go run to him, and Livramento has to do it. Salah and Chiesa and doing the build up before that have brought Dan Burn and Fabian Schär to leave that center box to go over there. So Livramento has to shift over. And when Szoboszlai does that, now there's no one marking Nugamora. And again, it's because Newcastle are losing. Newcastle are missing a man, and so they're able to finally make the extra man count. They get it to the kid, and the kid just one times it into the corner. Just an unbelievable finish, and an unbelievable just dummy by Dama Szoboszlai, and just a great cross by Mo Salah as well. He wasn't able to get many chances this game, but 2 games in a row and 2 games late where Salah does have an impact, and he has an impact with his right foot. So I love seeing that. I just hope we continue to see that because I think defenders know what Salah wants to do. He wants to get it always on his left foot. Sometimes he's able to still get some chances off, but if he can become 2-footed or at least just have that threat, he becomes so much more of a threat. You don't even have to have nearly as much pace if you can be 2-footed and uh, you can change your pace. So anyways, that's just where we are. The other thing to talk about is Liverpool were left-sided biased pretty much the entire game, and they finally put some moments together on the right. I don't think it was I don't think it was insignificant that this happened when Harvey Elliott came on a little bit. So that's just where we are. The Liverpool escape. The narrative entirely changed. It went from Liverpool in trouble. I think it would have been about basically Newcastle defending admirably, playing amazing. Down a man, brave, down a man. You know they were playing a high line. They weren't necessarily just sitting back. They were being really really brave with Dan Burn. They Liverpool weren't able to get behind him. Uh, and instead, it really became all about the kid afterwards. But look at this. I mean, Liverpool had 5 shots and only 4 on target. Newcastle outshot them 10-3, and they out XG'd them. And really, Liverpool Liverpool's like highest XG moment was really on the New Gamora goal. And the other thing to say as well is all 3 goals were low chance. And very well taken, obviously, but they got away with one to say the least. And first half possession, Liverpool have 62%, but that's red card inflicted. It was 46-54 in the first half. Newcastle only had 179 passes. That's what you would expect after being down a man. Liverpool did have 370, but only 83% accuracy. They weren't Thiago Alcantara or Man City, passing it around just for fun. Liverpool were struggling a little bit. It was low passing, and I think a lot of that is because their build up play has been off. It's been off the first couple of game weeks now, and sometimes in transition they aren't making the right passes. Wirtz and Jones, or to call out a couple players. There was one moment in the second half where a run was Ugo Ekekite was on, and Jones just didn't play it. And eventually, he just saw it too late. Jones had a very good game, to be fair to him, but it's just those kind of moments where he catches up a little bit. This might have even been before Newcastle got it to 2-1. So yeah, just kind of a moment to catch your breath, a moment to second week in a row, Liverpool have that kind of end result. But the main talking point to me is squad depth without Isak does look bare. If something happens to Ekikite, maybe an injury, if he's not available, the backup plan can't be Federico Chiesa in that regard. That just failed. I like Chiesa maybe as kind of Wirtz replacement, maybe as a number 10, underneath the striker. Maybe you can play him in one of the forward lines. Maybe you can do that kind of idea. I don't really love him as the false nine if that is the idea. The other thing too is uh, whether it's Mark Gahey or someone else, another center back is definitely needed. And I really like the idea of Gahey. Maybe you'd have to pay more one of those premiums for the EPL experience. But Gahey's young, and he's 6 foot or 6'1". Maybe he's even shorter than 6 foot. So he's a shorter center back, but he's very good in the air. He's got some bounce to him. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is he's unique. He can play right back, left back because he's two-footed, or right center back or left center back. That's a utility man. And anyone next to Van Dijk's going to have most of those aerials anyways. So it's not necessarily going to rely on him, to win those balls in the air. You just need him to be aggressive, and so he can give some cover for Kanate. Maybe he wouldn't be able to necessarily replace Van Dijk as far as the aerial, but at least, he's good with his foot. Good with both feet, but also just in general, good with the ball at his feet. He'd be a good, he wouldn't necessarily, he'd be a good person to pass from the back as well. It Palace have already lost Eze, so I don't really know if they're willing to lose more players, but, we'll see if Liverpool are able to get that deal over the line or not. Uh and then again, 2 weeks in a row where it's Hollywood ending stuff, really. Chiesa is not someone that's they've gotten 2 game winners from Chiesa, who just wasn't used last year, and then a 16-year-old of all people. Now, is this sustainable? I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say it is, but again, it's one of those where you just have to just kind of enjoy the moment. And then also, it's good that they've gotten these out of the way. They've gotten max points because Arsenal are coming to town, and they maybe have some wiggle room to maybe lose some points if they don't get the best if they don't have the best game versus Arsenal. Arsenal are coming into this limpered as well, and we'll get to that a little bit as well. Uh, but we'll see how everything will change after the international window is fully done, and then or after the deadline, the transfer deadline is done, and then the international window happens, and we'll see. Sometimes international windows lead to injuries for key players as well. So lots of ways for this to change. Obviously, we're just getting started. Some other kind of points too before I move on. The shape, the 4-2-1, 3-1 shape, with Wirtz and Ugo. To me, it does feel like it makes the midfield lighter because you have Wirtz kind of playing a little bit ahead. I don't feel like Wirtz knows his role. So many times Ugo Ekikite will maybe press either the goalkeeper or press a center back with the ball, and then Wirtz will try to join, and it seems like they're trying to maybe do a tandem, maybe they're trying to create a little bit of a trap, but all it's doing, in my opinion, because Salah's not always joining in, is Newcastle the team with the ball is able to just still find an extra man, and they're just able to, pass around those two. And when that happens, now the other team has the man advantage, going forward, and that's happening way too often. Liverpool has shape out of possession has not necessarily been good to start. I do think a lot of that is because Wirtz doesn't really know his level; he's going too early, and then Salah isn't really helping out of possession nearly as much too. You understand it because he's an older player. You want him to save his legs for the sprints, but it is starting to show up a tad. The other thing too is Wirtz versus Slubberschlei. Kind of spoke about that last week. That's what you're kind of replacing a little bit. You have maybe someone better at the ball at their feet, though they're still taking a little time to get going. But it's not a physical. It's not someone as physical as Slubberschlei as well. And the other thing to say is, speaking of him, no Frimpong. Dominic Slubberschlei was forced to do this change, and he was immense. You know, Connor Bradley was able to get 10 minutes in the legs. Frankly, I think Slot should go with Slobosly versus Arsenal, and we'll see if he does or not. The other thing to say is no Alexis McAllister this game because his wife was having their kid. Maybe we'll see Alexis McAllister versus Arsenal. Curtis Jones wasn't terrible, but we haven't seen Alexis McAllister and Ryan Gravenberch in the same midfield since the Tottenham games, when Liverpool actually won the league. I don't think that's insignificant. That could maybe say something about Liverpool's maybe depth isn't that great when both team players are missing or either player are missing. Their midfield doesn't look the same. But Alexis McAllister versus Arsenal's press is going to be needed. Alexis McAllister is also he just knows when to play a pass when maybe Curtis Jones doesn't. Uh, that said, Curtis Jones didn't have a bad game, but just that just kind of shows up to me a little bit. Ryan Gravenberch first game back, gets a goal. Maybe he could have done a little bit better, but I'll, I shouldn't necessarily be critical of him. I think him getting that early yellow, it limited how physical he could be, and that really did hurt because against this Newcastle team, you needed to challenge a lot of these 50-50s where, Konate getting that early yellow and then, Gravenberch as well, that limited what you could do. Maybe versus Arsenal, that things will be different. The other thing to say is Van Dijk was unbelievable. And again, you were thankful that he was just able to walk after the Gordon challenge, and then he played unbelievable after that as well. So that's just where that's where we are. Szoboszlai, Fetties, Valverde, kind of already talked about that too. Taking a little while for words to get used to those physical battles. I do think people are freaking out about him a little bit now. His time will come. When you get the midfield sorted and you have control in games, I think that's when you can maybe use him around in clever ways. Right now, things are just kind of too chaotic. Maybe Wirtz isn't going to be used the best in those kind of games when things are chaotic. But when games are settled, maybe in Champions League when the game is slower, that's when you're going to start to see him shine. And that's not even hoping. I've seen Bayern Leverkusen. I've seen him, work his magic. I've seen him in the international level, in the Euros where he was unbelievable. He's going to come good. It'll just the first opening up with Bournemouth and Newcastle, and then the Arsenal is not really the easiest way to start new life into a new league, new country. He'll be fine. But it is taking a little time to get used to it. I do think also he's playing with a different striker than maybe he's used to with Ekikite. They seem to still kind of be the miscommunication when to go forward, when not. But that said, it, people are maybe kind of going overboard on how poor he's been. I don't think he's really been poor at all. Maybe he got a little bit bullied in this game, but I thought for Bournemouth he was very good and just he makes some runs that just maybe aren't necessarily being seen yet. And again, in with McAllister back, maybe he'll be able to find that with Gravenberch back. We haven't seen maybe what Liverpool's full strength team can be, and actually, weirdly enough, I think maybe their full 11, or their best 11 fully fit might even be Szoboszlai instead of Jeremy Frimpong. So we're gonna see. Maybe we'll see that for Arsenal. We'll have to see. The other complaint here, spoke about it a little bit, is Allison. Allison was quick to come out to sweeper keep. That's important. He always makes the saves, and that's very important as well. I mean, I still think he's the best keeper in the world. Uh, but I do think he is quick sometimes to just boot the ball away. And when he's pressed, and sometimes he's not as comfortable on the ball as people maybe would think. And I think he's going to need to be patient versus Arsenal because that's one of the things Arsenal are really good at is just pressing really really high and forcing those turnovers like mad. Arsenal have those towers like Declan Rice, and you've got Saliba and you've got Gabriel that like pressing high in that halfway line area. If you go long, you're going to lose it to Arsenal. You're going to need to play through them. Now, one of the things that Liverpool did last year at versus Arsenal in the Emirates was Kelleher was a big reason why you were able to break that Arsenal press just because he was holding on to the ball and he was waiting for Arsenal to run at them. And then they used Trent and they used Gravenberch and they were able to just kind of they slowed the game down in that second half, and that's why Liverpool were able to rebound after starting a really bad first half. Can Liverpool kind of learn to do that as well? Allison needs to kind of learn to do that because to make Arne Slot's system really work, in my opinion. Now they have got out and brought Mamardashvili, and I do think the idea is eventually to move to him, not necessarily to move off Allison this season. Uh, I do think that is starting to show a little bit. It could be me exaggerating or not, but we'll have to see to that. Again, he in 1v1s and when it actually comes to the shot stopping, there is no one I would want in goal, otherwise. Uh, but that's just kind of where we are. That's where maybe we are for both teams. Let's see, Newcastle points. Certainly a lot of positives to take along with the negatives. You know, you lose to Nolly and Gordon and the Joe Linton, and then no Isak isn't available either. And I mentioned how maybe it was a mistake to play Harvey Barnes. Again, Soboslai was the right back, and there really wasn't any issues with him. With no Gordon, Usula has to get a chance here, and apparently they've been linked to maybe bring in Strand Larson of Wolves if they can get that across the line or not. Uh, it, Isak seems to be very firm on not really playing for them again. It's a World Cup year, so I don't really know how this is going to get solved. If Newcastle don't want to sell him, does Liverpool go, or a different club try to go for him in January? Uh, it's become a very weird situation where um, it didn't feel like this kind of relationship was that fractured after the start of or after the end of last season. Now, there's been talks that Isak and his agent, informed Eddie Howe, informed the club that he wanted to move on early in the summer, and Newcastle maybe thought that was just if they held off, maybe they could change his mind a little bit, and it doesn't feel like that's changed. I don't necessarily know if it's because Liverpool are the club that's trying to go after him or not. No, it doesn't feel like any other club can offer the 130 or 150 whatever million that Newcastle have the valuation for. That does feel high, but when Benjamin Sesko is going for 100 for Man United, um, Benjamin Sesko is not going to get 20 goals in the league, in my opinion. That Isak is guaranteed. Isak gets 20 goals and he's injured for 10 games in the season. Uh, he is the closest to Erling Haaland in that respect as far as just he's guaranteed to get you goals. You're paying for the goals. He's also good with his feet. He's good in many areas. He's 6'3" unicorn or however tall he is. He moves like a gazelle. He not flight of foot. Makes clever runs. He can link up play. Him and Ekikita. I actually wonder if maybe Liverpool would change the shape if they were able to get him. Maybe they play with two strikers. Maybe the idea is eventually kind of move when they do kind of move off from Salah. Maybe that is the actual succession plan. Um, Maybe you do a 4-2-2-4. So I don't really know what the idea is. I frankly, if not Isak, they need to get someone in, even someone like a Wiza on Brentford. They need to get a second striker in because it can't just be Chiesa. Yeah, they do have someone like Jaden Dans, but I can't, that can't just be it. Anyways, that's where we are there. See how we're doing for time. It's probably what it normally is, and yeah. So I need to speed this up a little bit, and we will get started, or we will move on with Man City and Tottenham. Tottenham went 2-0 with Brennan Johnson and then Paulinho, and no, I was not expecting this. I was expecting maybe it to be a little bit more competitive than not. Spurs just for some reason love beating Man City, regardless of who's on the team. If it's Son versus Pep Guardiola or Harry Kane, or in this case, if it's Brennan Johnson or Yao Paulinho. Uh, and whether or not regardless of the coach, whether it's Conte or Mourinho or even Thomas Frank or Ange, it just seems Spurs get something on Man City every year now. Uh, and Man City, had that opening versus Wolves where everyone was singing their praises. I was as well, just because I liked the different approach. But one thing I can give myself credit here. One thing I did say is I was a little bit, we're getting Pep Lenders in to be a high press, a high pressing uh, side. They were forcing Wolves into turnovers, and they were doing that because they were making up ground, and by doing that, you're playing your center backs a little higher up. Wolves didn't really have that ability to go long and get over the top. in a way that Spurs did. And I actually mentioned this in my last podcast, where Richarlison and Kudus do have that ability to, or even Brendan Johnson. I don't think I've mentioned him. Do have that ability to get in behind. The ball over the top will be on. It doesn't really make sense to play two very slow center backs in that kind of system over the course of the season with John Stones and Ruben Diaz. I was mostly focusing on Diaz. If you found a way to have someone next to John Stones, maybe this could still work out. Or the other thing as well is versus Wolves, they had Ait Nouri that was really staying back. Ait Nouri wasn't being as offensive minded that I noticed versus Wolves. He was staying back and almost, he was supposed to be kind of a little bit of that defensive cover. He gets hurt 15 minutes into the game. I think that's where Man City lost this. I haven't really seen a whole lot of people kind of talking that up. Ake comes on and it just feels like Ake actually falls for one of the runs, and he goes a little bit upfield, and that forces Ruben Diaz to go over and run to where Sarr is, and then Sarr basically runs the header over Ruben Diaz, and now John Stones has to make that up with Richarlison. He's not able to keep him on offsides. John Stones was able to get away with that versus Wolves a couple of times where he was able to get that step up right. But people did talk about how last week Wolves did get the ball into the net, and a couple of times they were dangerous, and just John Stones did a really good job of learning how to step ahead, to play people offsides with the offsides trap. It is dangerous to play that way, and actually, in the Spurs game, here, it was originally called offsides. It was really tight, but they have these infrared radars now. They have the offsides technology where they're able to actually get it right, or at least as close as they can. And you're stepping on a needle here. If one way or the other, it is risky to play that way, and to not have any kind of recovery ability in that back line is weird to me. I don't understand why Khrushchev isn't actually getting game starts for Man City now because of that. I think I even mentioned that last week. So that's kind of where we are here. The other thing to talk about is Thomas Frank played a back three or five versus PSG. Played very defensive minded. I was thinking maybe he would do the same thing versus Man City because he did that with Brentford. Also, Thomas Frank has had success versus Man City as well versus Brentford. So kudos there. He continues to have success versus Man City. Underrated manager, Thomas Frank. Uh, but here, it's very fair to praise them as well because they were brave. They didn't go into a back five. And one thing that they can do is they can press and they can play high because Mickey Van de Ven, because you have Spence. Romero isn't terrible, but maybe can be got up. But Romero can work because you have Van de Ven next to him. Uh, No, Spurs are playing a high line the entire game. They're pressing like mad with Paulinho and Betancourt and Sarr in the midfield as well. And they're able to do that even with Holland because Van de Ven is always there. Spence, likewise, was locking up Oscar Bob. Oscar Bob could do nothing. Um, so that's why it was different. And with Man City, we see a little bit of a change here, and maybe that was a bit of the shakeup as well. Maybe that's why it didn't work out as well as the Wolves game. Now, also Tottenham aren't Wolves, so that's worth kind of saying as well. But we did see a shakeup here. We see Ryan Shirky get a start, and it's Reinders, and then it's Nico Gonzalez. So no Bernardo Silva, and then Oscar Bob, kind of what we expected, Holland, and then Marmoush instead of Doku. Now it's not the biggest change. Doku, mentioned how he maybe didn't have his best game. Marmoush is kind of is in a weird kind of spot here because he's a very direct player, not always the most pep friendly. Doku is direct as well. Marmoush isn't really a one-on-one take on, but one thing he's very good at is he's good at getting in behind. He's clever with his runs, and Man City start this game with Marmoush getting behind. He has a chance where the angle is a little tight, but he is able to get a decent shot past Vicario. And then there's a nice moment where Holland actually has a good little dribble, and he's able to slip a ball in where Marmoush is basically 1v1 with the keeper, and just he can't chip it over Vicario. I don't necessarily know if Doku would have done a better job, or maybe Foden maybe would have done a better job. Maybe Man City score that, and maybe it's a different game. So Man City were getting the more of the looks in the first half, and it did feel like as this game was going on, it was a little bit different. Cherky was the more advanced kind of number 10, played instead, and Reinders, instead of being that 10, was almost played a little bit deeper, and Cherky was getting bullied as a result with Betancourt, and Paulinho and Sarr, and again just Spurs midfield were just we're running to the ball like a madman with a purpose. And Man City, we're struggling with that. The other thing too is on any kind of restart, any kind of goal kick, they were playing really high up. Sar, yeah, Sar, Kudus and Richarlison were doing a very good job to run at City with the City center backs with the ball at their feet. To run at Trafford when he had the ball at his feet as well. I don't know if they could have done that if Ederson were in goal, because one of the things about Ederson, maybe he wasn't the best with his saves, is Ederson would not freak out if you were running at him with the ball. Ederson would actually take his time. He would make you spend all your energy to run all the way up to him, and then he would find someone easy. And then usually City would actually beat you just simply by that move. The other thing too is Ederson was always good at picking out Holland doing a running behind. And I feel like that's just kind of one thing that maybe they're missing a little bit here. And one thing to also say is, I did say Trafford was an interesting call versus Wolves. He actually had a pretty good game, but I was wondering, would they look somewhere else? Because to ride the whole season on just James Trafford to me felt very risky, and we saw that play out at least in this week as well. So we'll get to kind of the moment. Uh, so you have Ait Nouri getting injured, and Ake comes in, and we get to the goal, and it's just Sarr runs right again, and he has that winner, that header flick that to advances the ball. So Diaz is now out of the picture. John Stones is now out of the picture. Richarlison is in behind, and it's just really easy. It's really easy for Richarlison to pick out Brendan Johnson. It's just square ball in. Uh, and that Trafford can't really keep out. And the other thing too is Rico Lewis was the right back, but he was out of position. That's kind of the you're damned if you do and don't if you play an inverted kind of fullback, because what happens is if they're trying to play in midfield, they're out of position in case a ball is turned over, or in case a ball is you know uh, sent to the back, and Rico Lewis isn't able to recover in time. He does try to he does get close. He does get close to go to the ground to try to block the cross, but he's not able to, and Trafford can't save it. And then Trafford just loses his head before the second goal. He comes out and fully takes out Mo Kudus, again, it's just a ball over the top that John Stones and Ruben Diaz can't handle. Kudus looks to like he's going to get in. Trafford does have to come out, but he doesn't get on the ball and basically knees Kudus in the chest. And I was amazed that wasn't at least a foul. I thought it was a goal scoring opportunity. Trafford also gets caught using his arm, and nothing is called. I was really shocked by that. But maybe a little karma happened, because a little bit after that, there's a goal kick, and Spurs immediately start up high, and they're baiting a lazy pass into the box. Trafford does exactly that. Sarr pokes a ball off Ruben Diaz or Nico Gonzalez, and then from there, Trafford tries to recover, and he can't. And then Paulinho is just able to get on the end of the rebound to make it 2-0. It didn't even feel like a 2-0 game. It didn't feel like City were playing that bad. But City were playing a very high defensive line, knowing that Tottenham were capable of a ball over the top. And again, once they lost Ait Nouri, I did feel like that became a problem. And then the second half, there was a couple moments for City to maybe make it more of a contest. Turkey has a cross that finds Holland. Turkey started to come into life a little bit in the second half. Turkey had a lovely slip pass to Rico Lewis into the box. Similar moment as last week with Spurs, where Oscar Bob was able to just get Jed Spence to just kind of be away, and you're able to slip in Rico Lewis to have a channel to run into the box. Pretty nice play here, but just unfortunately for them, the cross ended up finding Nathan Ake. Not really, a goal scorer in that kind of respect, and Ake has a poor touch, heavy touch, and that allows Paulinho to then make a pretty good block. Again, Nori probably hits that first time. Uh, or maybe takes a better touch. That could have been, a chance to make it 2-0, and then there was another moment where Spurs actually forced a bad turnover in the or City forced a bad turnover in the Tottenham end, and Holland maybe just has too heavy of a pass, and he hits it too far where Cherky can't get onto it. Otherwise, that could have been a tap in. That could have made it 2-1 with 60 minutes on the clock, plenty of time to still go. and it didn't. And then Cherky went off. Pep brought on Rodri. He brought on Foden, brought on Bernardo Silva, and it just felt like that didn't really change things. Rodri came on, didn't look bad. He had a chance for a header as well, but it just felt. Doku also came on for Marmoush. That was the other one as well. Doku had a moment to get by Pora and rip a cross off, but he failed to do it. Bernardo Silva to me looked like he smoked a pack of cigarettes before the game. His Lex look shot. Foden had some flashes, but again, not really enough to actually scare Vicario either. So and Pep continues to reiterate that Rodri isn't ready for the 90 minutes. I think one of the reasons why he did some of those changes was he wanted to move Reinders more into that number 10 area to make him more kind of advanced. Reinders had some moments in the first half where he just kind of lost his head. There were a couple of times where uh, it, he would get the ball in the box and he was trying to maybe do a one timer to Holland when the run wasn't on. He was hesitant to shoot or a couple of times where, he did actually get a shot off when there was a Spurs player right in front of him when, maybe, a square pass, to a teammate was on instead. It just felt like Reinders didn't really have his best game. So that kind of showed up a little bit as well. Uh, and the other thing is to say is City were having some moments in the second half, but at the same time, Spurs were not relenting. And they weren't just sitting in a shell. They were still trying to run when City had the ball and try to squeeze every blade of grass in that middle third and suffocated them, and they did so. They only had 39% possession. They had 259 passes, 78% accuracy. This was a perfect game for Thomas Frank Ball. Well, now we'll see over the course of the season if this will work for say a Crystal Palace or someone or Fulham. Someone that's other kind of maybe I don't want to say defensive minded teams, but other teams that don't really care about maybe a Nottingham Forest would be a really good example. Other teams that don't necessarily care about having the ball either, where you can't just kind of press to have these mistakes, where you actually have to maybe break a team down. We haven't seen Spurs being able to do that yet, with the losses to Madison and Kulishevsky uh, and not getting Eze, they maybe don't have that kind of player to break teams down that are well organized. Man City were the kind of the perfect opponent for Tottenham to play in that kind of respect. City did have two big chances missed. Uh, Man City were not as bad as it looked, and again, with Ederson playing instead of Trafford, I think Man City even possibly win this game. If not for the Aït injury, that possibly influenced things as well. But it's more about Spurs. Basically, I like the idea that Thomas Frank didn't just go with the back five, versus the big bully, bigger club. It was away as well. I really was expecting Kevin Danso and I was expecting the three center backs to worry about Holland because if you had done that, you wouldn't have been able to control the midfield the way you did, and you wouldn't have had the three to press up front, the way you did. You would have allowed City to have way more control of the ball had you played with the three center backs instead. Maybe you limit Holland's ability, but I think it was the right call to go with what he did, and the other trick we saw Bergvall and Gray replaced for Paulinho and Betancourt, and that ended up being the right call as well. We've seen Spurs being able to rotate a little bit. We've seen Burnley in one game and here different. Uh, uh, I do think they need to bring someone in. They maybe are linked to Xavi Simmons that I just saw of Leipzig. Uh, they just missed out on Eze. If they get Simmons in, that's I don't wanna say it's like for like, but that maybe is even a better player. That would be one heck of a signing. We have to remember Spurs just finished 17th in the league last season, but because they won Europa, they're in Champions League. So they should be able to do a little bit more than they've done so far. Uh, I think Frank needs someone. I mentioned it last week. His teams struggled to break teams down for many years, despite having elite attackers, because he never really had someone special in midfield until he got Mikel Damsgaard. And his last season at Brentford, Damsgaard really did kind of open up everything, and I feel like they're missing a little some magic, in that kind of respect. So we'll see if they're able to get some kind of signing in the door or not. I think they've been linked to El Canus as well of Leicester. obviously Xavi Simmons would be blockbuster. They were trying to get Man City's Savinho at one point as well, where City were maybe linked to Rodrigo, which I wouldn't have really liked. But that's just kind of where we are there. To speak about Man City, Turkey was dominated in the second half. In the first half, in the second half, he did come to light, and then Pep, hooked him. So that wasn't necessarily great. Oscar Bob could not get past Jet Spence to save his life as well. I think one of the things Pep should probably do if they are keeping Savinho is probably play him. Um, Oscar Bob did a very good job in reverse Wolves, but here, he needed to. His kind of diminutive body, did kind of show up a little bit. He does do a good job of keeping that width, and maybe it would be fine if you had someone other than maybe Rico Lewis at the right back. We haven't seen Mateus Nunes yet, Mateus Nunes isn't necessarily a right back either, but at least he stays wide and he can do some things as well. I do think that the balance isn't necessarily there. And then Stones and Diaz as well. I don't think together they can play in a high line over the course of the season. Also, James Trafford, the City are linked to Donnarumma. I don't understand why all of a sudden they've had a falling out with Ederson. Just as someone that doesn't want City to win the title again, I would be worried if they moved off Ederson. But maybe that relationship has been broken. I don't really know. Nori injury, hurt them as well. Kind of, spoke about that too, and then spoke a little bit more. Said what I needed to say about Tottenham as well, and then we move on to Arsenal and Leeds. There's not much to talk about the actual game itself because Arsenal took a while to really get going. Um, that said, let's see. Okay. That said, the kind of the main talking point here. Well, Victor Gyökeres gets a brace, so good for him to get started. The the goal he scored was he did well to get the ball through two defenders and able to find the back the near post. Did well to make himself available. It's a nice ball over the top by Calafiori. He sees it early. And one of the things that Arsenal were not doing in that first half was they weren't looking for him. This is a team that's gone many years without playing with the number 9. It feels like they're still trying to get used to that a little bit. A couple of times where maybe a cross was on to just play something to allow him to maybe bully some people into the box. Maybe you get a 50-50 to go your way, and they weren't doing that. They were trying to if nothing was perfectly on, they were recycling things. Now, that's probably the better way to play. That would you're able to suffocate Leeds in that respect. Leeds really were not able to get any kind of chance in this game. But it did feel like they were sleepwalking a little bit, and then they were able to get on the score sheet on the corner kick again. Corner kick FC. That said, they are very good at those set pieces, and I'm making jokes, but I'm also jealous as well. Timber, and then Saka makes it 2-0. Arsenal turnover, a pretty good job by Zubimendi quickly to find Timber, and then Timber quickly finds it to Saka. Saka right foots it into the far corner. Really good shot by Saka. But really, the headlines after that, after Gilchrist, having the brace, is Odegaard gets an injury. Maybe he injured his shoulder. Doesn't look like he's going to be available for Liverpool now. And then Saka. Saka is probably the more kind of concern because Saka pulls up. Saka was rushed back last year after having a really bad hamstring injury, and by doing that, they were able to maybe have a somewhat of a Champions League push. They honestly, if Martinelli or Trossard had been able to get some things past Donnarumma, Arsenal might have won the Champions League last season. So uh, it was a risk to rush Saka back. I don't understand why Saka has played all 90 minutes in the first game. He played a lot of time in the preseason as well. It just doesn't make sense to me why you keep running this kid to the ground, and now you're gonna have to go without him. So they brought in Ebericha Eze. That can maybe be an Odegaard replacement. They have Nodi Madueke, who I think is probably better on the right side than the left. Anyways, I think we saw that for Chelsea. He seemed to be better on that side. So you now have cover for Saka. They have Ethan Wanyori as well. If you don't really like doing if you don't want to do Saka through the middle, maybe you play Saka on the left instead of Martinelli. And Trossard and Martinelli as well. So you have some cover for some of these injuries in a way that you didn't before. Um, But that said, I just think it's been criminal, management, in my opinion, by Arteta to just run Saka to the ground, and it really is unfortunate. Even when Saka, I was tweeting about this. In the first 2 games, I haven't seen Saka really make a sprint once. There were a couple of times versus Man United when, there was some space to maybe do a carry, and Saka was just kind of, limpering a little bit. I I don't necessarily know if maybe he tweaked something even before that, but he hasn't looked right. They rushed him back last season, and you just hope that he's not going to be permanently gone. What made him fun was his burst. Uh, and if he does, it'll be a shame if he does kind of lose that because he's too young for that. He's too gifted for that. But they need to be careful with him. To be honest, so we'll see if they are able to or not. We'll see if Saka's able to rebound, but he'll at least miss Liverpool, in my opinion. And we'll see what Arteta is able to field. It's going to be a different team now. Without Havertz as well. So Gyökeres is going to start, and deservedly so. And then Timber, makes it 4-0, and then, the reason why Gyökeres gets a brace is one of them is a PK, and the PK is created, because, Arsenal's 15-year-old, Max Dowman gets a debut, looks bright as well, bright and fearless, and Max Dowman was making some headlines in the preseason for them as well, so this is a crazy, week, in the league where Max Dowman got a debut, Rio Nigamura, got a debut, and then Chelsea's kind of senior in the squad in this point, the 18-year-old in Esteval, got a debut and looked pretty good in Chelsea's game as well. Other kind of things to talk about: Mosquera debuted, was played at right back, which was of a surprise, and frankly. The reason why Max Dowman gets that PK is Mosquera is actually doing an overlap. Uh, One of the things that maybe Timber doesn't always do, or even Ben White. So I don't think we'll see Mosquera get a start necessarily, but I was surprised about that. I thought he was more kind of a center back, but he looked lightning quick. So that's maybe a positive for Arsenal, and then Calafiori continues to play well for them. They're still kind of trying to find a way to get him in the midfield as well, and maybe you can do that because Gabriel can handle those things in behind. But we saw versus Arsenal, versus Man United, that was giving them fits. So and we Leeds aren't going to necessarily offer that problem, but Liverpool do have Salah. So we'll see if that happens or not. I don't think that will. But apparently they are linked now to Pierre Campe of Bayern Leverkusen, who does play either at center back or can be at left back. So it looks like they're thinking more of that direction as well. Arteta loves the idea of center backs playing playing in his back line. Apparently, can never have enough defenders. But to be fair, you stop the ball from going in. You only need to score once, and they're so good on set pieces. Maybe that'll be enough to win the league. Uh, Everyone else has got injuries or thin squads or not. Maybe Arsenal can just kind of bully people to win a title. Uh, so I mean, just kind of going off and they did make a signing in the midweek that is exciting in Ebridge as a. Don't know where he'll play, if it's off the left or through the middle. People have been talking about maybe he can be as a 10. Either way, he's exciting, and he's a goal scorer. He's a creator. I don't think he'll have any issues, adjusting to playing for a big club. At Palace, he showed he's just he's not just a transition threat. He's very very good when games are settled and you need someone to kind of pick up a lock. He's a very gifted player. And linked to Spurs, and it was interesting how Spurs fans thought they were actually going to be the team to get him, and it goes instead to the Tottenham rival, as you can say. So that could be fun little storyline when the North London derby happens, and maybe he'll make Arsenal more exciting. We'll have to see as well. Uh, and the reason why I'm not really talking about the game is just Leeds didn't really offer anything. And it was really, really unfortunate. They were able to keep the ball a little bit, but just no threat going forward. Dan Burn was on the wing. He only has just kind of one motor to him. It didn't feel like Leeds had really a threat, going forward. As far as attacking threat, they had 3 shots the entire game and just one on target, 32% possession. And unfortunately for them, when you gave up the second goal to Saka, and it just comes from basically being a little careless on the ball. They pitch it off Arsenal, and then they immediately give it back, and then Arsenal able to just once they got the 2-0 lead, it was over. Also, when you can't defend set pieces, it's over anyways. Um, Arsenal 528 passes, 92% accuracy. Arsenal have started strong, at least in that respect. Th- th- it- you can't take much from this game with Leeds, but at that point, first game of the season, we probably shouldn't have drawn many conclusions versus Man United. The other thing I will say is in that first week versus Man United, the way that they were playing Calafiore was inviting a whole lot of that. Raya did have to make a ton of saves. Uh, but that was the case where Raya was also Arsenal were doing weird stuff. They were maybe experimenting going long. They're trying to see what they had with Victor Gyökeres. They took him off, after 60 minutes as well. Arsenal only had like 200 so passes versus Man United in a side that just you don't really remember Man United being good at stopping teams out of possession. Here, more kind of back to normal. The 520. Here, you got to see a little bit more of what Zubamendi can offer you as well, and so. That's the talking points are the injuries, and then the talking points are Gyökeres getting going for them, and then the debuts for Dauman and Mosquera. Uh, and we'll see what Arsenal are able to line up versus Liverpool. And we'll see. Let's see. That's probably the main thing to talk about. Yeah, on to Anfield now. What does Arsenal do with the front line? And when Yori is kind of another one that maybe can be in the picture if not Miles Lewis Skelly. Where does he kind of fit into this as well? If you're looking at bringing in Hidden Campy, it seems like Miles Lewis Skelly might be midfield cover this season than necessarily left back, which everyone has said is his position anyways. So that's kind of where we are there, and then we'll get to Chelsea and West Ham. No Cole Palmer, no problem is kind of the headline here. West Ham have lots of problems. They have no legs in the team outside of Jared Bowen, and they have a big problem. They had the defensively shambolic. It doesn't feel like Ogard and Max Tillman can cover any kind of ground, and Tadibo has 2 games in a row where he's been really poor as well, and Tadibo needs to be kind of their rock. Otherwise, this is not going to work out at all. And Tadibo was very, very poor on a couple of these. The other Wan-Bissaka was as well, which we'll get to. But the midfield of Ward-Prowse and Thomas Suchek will get them relegated. They can't go with that. And I've seen that they have been linked now to Siguru, Magasaka, Magasaza, uh, a French player. We'll just kind of go with there. And then they've been maybe linked to Southampton's Mateus Fernandez. Now, you do that, that actually does give you some legs in midfield where you can maybe turn this around a little bit. But right now, it's hopeless. Dan Potts came in the second half, maybe gave them a little bit more something. The other thing to say too is that's just when the ball's in play. You're playing a back three, you're playing a defensive-minded shape anyways, and so you're going to give a teams a lot of looks at your goal. That means lots of shots. The keeper is gonna have to make a lot of saves. The keeper has been very poor on these opening 2 days, and then that also means maybe deflections that go out of bounds, and you have to defend lots of corner kicks, and they've poor defending a corner kick uh, versus Sunderland last week, and then here they gave away 2 goals on corner kicks here, where it felt like Chelsea were going to score on every corner kick they got. So, and the crazy thing here is, they get the opening goal with Paqueta, and it just at one point it felt like they maybe scored a second one with a nice hit from by Fulkrug, so they almost made it 2-1. But Tadibo was judged as a fraction offside. But at this point, it didn't feel like, hey, maybe something was happening here. And then, just Wan-Bissaka just got caught napping, on a couple of these back posts. So we get to, Paqueta, Pedro, and then Neto, and then Enzo Fernandez, and then Caicedo, to make it, and then, I think it's, Chalba to make it, 5-1. A couple of those on corner kicks, just not being able to do anything. But we get to the Chelsea goals I do wanna get to. So to make it 2-1, Pedro Neto, Yao Pedro scores on the first corner kick, and then Pedro Neto Yao Pedro finds Neto on the back post. So West Ham lose the ball very cheaply in there, and I think it's Diouf who plays maybe plays a pass he shouldn't. Paqueta can't control it, and then just loses it after a Casado challenge, and then it's just Pedro cross back post, and Wamasaka's caught napping a little bit, but also I think Tadibo is as well, and then Enzo Fernandez, and this one's pretty bad. As well, really lovely link up play by Rory Delap here to talk that up. He ups frees Esteval in my opinion, and Esteval gets on the ball, has a great little run into the box, looks like Speedy Gonzalez here. He's short of stature, but he's got maybe Tasmanian Devil. Maybe that's kind of a better way to better person to talk about. But he just lightning quick with the lightning feet. West Ham can't get near him, and then he has a really nice square ball into the box that finds into Fernandez back post, where again Wan-Bissaka and Tadibo are asleep. And Esteval probably doesn't get a start without Cole Palmer being hurt. So and he looks good because the original lineup shown before Cole Palmer got picked up the injury in the warm up was Yao Pedro was still playing. It was going to be Palmer maybe on the right, and then Pedro through the 10 with Rory Delap. It was interesting to see Delap get the start, and frankly, in my opinion, that probably is Chelsea's best lineup or best kind of a front lineup. Uh, that's what we saw in the Club World Cup. We did not see that versus Crystal Palace, and I think they were missing someone like a Rory Delap. And mentioning some of these goals here, Delap's name isn't on the sheet. He played a very good game, and I'll kind of talk about it that as well. One of the reasons why Yao Pedro was able to excel, in my opinion, here is Delap was occupying these defenders, West Ham defenders on him, where Pedro was able to get free on the ball. A couple of times where a 50-50 was needed, or maybe a link up, a clever flick. Delap was seen kind of doing that. Uh, I think maybe on the last one of the corner kick goals that happens, and maybe it's the Casado one. Uh, there's a very Delap kind of runs to the ball. It brings a West Ham defender to run with him, and then he has a nice little clever flick to play in Yao Pedro. And then I think they maybe it plays in Esteval when Esteval probably could have actually scored on this, but instead the shot was blocked and it goes out for a corner kick, and basically Chelsea score on that corner kick. Uh, West Ham were just all over the place. So I mean, speak about Chelsea. Marlo Gusto, Tosin, Chalaba, Cucurella. Gusto gets hurt, and in comes Reece James, and Reece James felt like he was playing inverted. And Reece James could be a midfielder in my opinion, and be a very good midfielder. He had an unbelievable through ball that nearly played in Estevao as well when he came on. Casado and Enzo Fernandez. One of the reasons why Casado and Enzo Fernandez didn't work last year is it didn't feel like Enzo Fernandez had the stamina or had the physical body to advance forward when maybe that was needed. And towards the end of the season, we did see that a little bit. We saw that. I think we saw Enzo Fernandez score in the in the Conference League final when Chelsea were losing, and we saw him get some goals in the Club World Cup, and we see him making some box crashing runs here, where that's kind of needed. You need someone to make it. Maybe it's not going to be necessarily Casado, but you need someone to, when everyone is lined up a little bit, you need someone to make a late run into the box where maybe it's not always covered, and that's actually where they get one of the goals. So a couple weeks now where Enzo looks a little bit better, and maybe it didn't work out with Palace because Palace are a little just better defensively. And then Esteval, starts because of Cole Palmer, and then Tosin starts as well instead of Achimampong, which is unfortunate for him because Achimampong played well, but Tosin played well. And then with West Ham, the back three, the mid, you can't really cover anyone. The midfield can't run. The forward line, besides Bowen, can't run. They're playing very narrow. That we saw that the same kind of formation. We saw the same kind of shape and issues that we saw for Sunderland. Here, there's really not much to talk about West Ham until they get some other people in. Uh, Frankly, I don't necessarily want to say this would be a favorite to go down, but I can say confidently say they'd be a favorite to maybe have a new manager before October. If they don't bring some different players in, if Potter isn't able to change this up because they haven't looked competitive. So it's not good for them. I mean Chelsea bullied them. It's probably what you expect, but it is what it. I mean ecstasy. Also as well that they were able to just kind of bully Graham Potter. Chelsea fans do not like Graham Potter because of that stint they had with him. But they stole Graham Potter from Brighton, so it's what Chelsea gets. It's also what Graham Potter gets for leaving the situation he had at Brighton for maybe he thought it was going to be greener pastures, and instead he's kind of killed his reputation. And not looking good, not looking good for him. I don't always remember him always playing a back three, but for some reason he's decided to do that at West Ham. That said, this team just constructed is weird, but he's also he's not making the best decisions as well. He's got to almost start Potts in my opinion. He at least has some legs. I don't really know what you can do. Um, as far as on the back end, the one of the changes we saw in the second half was maybe Wan-Bissaka actually playing as a center back, and instead, we saw Kyle Walker-Peters actually come on, and Kyle Walker-Peters actually wasn't that bad. West Ham did have a couple of moments in the second half where they were a little bit brighter after the changes, but that said, if you can't, the keeper situation is poor. They brought in Hermanson from Leicester instead of Areola. I don't necessarily know if that's made them better. There's a lot of reasons to worry if you are a West Ham fan, but still, and it looks like they've gotten away from Edson Alvarez, who's kind of a rock a little bit for them in midfield. Uh, they've gotta find a way to bring some people in. I don't really know what they can do. Nicholas Fulkrug can be a good striker to get on the end of things, but out of possession, he is a refrigerator. He's just standing still. And he's got no runs through his game at all, and everything is reliant on Jared Bowen really to be the legs in the side. You've given away Mo Kudus for crackers, and it doesn't feel like they've replaced him. Now there is Cristiano Sansa Somerville waiting in the wings, maybe more diminutive, but at least he could offer you something. And there is Luis Guilherme. He was supposed to be kind of a bright Brazilian youngster, coming through the wings as well, and he did look up okay. In the summer U.S. games that I saw, he hasn't been featured. Maybe he picked up an injury or a knock. So it'll maybe take some time to see him. Maybe he gets going. Maybe that's the reason why they let go of Kudus. I don't know. But they need to do something. I don't necessarily know if they're looking at strikers to replace uh to uh to not necessarily go with Fulkrug the whole season, but that everyone's going for strikers now, so I don't really know if that would be the best call. To me, they've got to get midfielders in. I do like the names that they've been linked to as far as the midfielders and Magus Sigiru, the French midfielder, and I can't because I can't say names, and then Mateus Fernandez. I do think those would be good additions if they can get that across the line. Maybe that'll be enough to at least. It doesn't feel like West Ham's goal is going to be anything other than trying to stay up. Maybe they can do that. We'll have to see, and then we'll get to Crystal Palace and Nottingham Forest and see how we're doing for time. This one, the thing to talk about here is this is a really good case. This is a really good game for Nottingham Forest to test if they've changed from last season. Because one of the raps about them was they were really good in games, and versus kind of the bigger clubs because they have a philosophy where it doesn't really matter if they have the ball or not. They're fine actually playing with only 30% possession. What happens though when you go up against a team that's kind of in a similar kind of mindset? They don't really want to have the ball either. They're looking for some chaos. They're looking for some turnovers and ways to transition. Both of these clubs are kind of mirrored in the same kind of way. That said, Nuno Espirito Santos, the Nottingham Forest manager, has mentioned how they tried to have a different look in the preseason where they tried to improve being on the ball. Uh, Not just basically to have a little bit more control, but also in those games where things are kind of stale. Do you have an ability to kind of break through some locks? Apparently, that's one of the things that they were really focusing on in the summer. Nottingham Forest journalists were saying it wasn't really coming off, but at least they liked the idea that they were looking at that way. But then we'll get to the other story about Nottingham Forest, before this. But it ends 1-1 with a Sar really nice find by Munoz. Good cross into the box. So Sar steps up. Sar needs to step up now that they don't have Eza. You're gonna need him to pitch out with goals and maybe creation. And then Hudson Odoi in the second half where he made a very good run in behind the high Palace back line. It's an unbelievable through ball by Dan and Doy. It's maybe lucky because the way that this is disguised. I think Palace thought it was gonna go to, Chris Wood, and Chris Wood would have been marked, and instead, Chris Wood basically almost dummies it and allows it to go past him, and then Rodrigo Munoz or whoever it might have been Tyreek Mitchell. Tyreek Mitchell and Maxence Lacroix just Maxence Lacroix is covering the Chris Wood run. Uh, Tyreek Mitchell just can't stick with Hudson Dory, and this is unbelievable through ball by him. So Forest made it 1-1, and then after that, Forest brought on a couple signings that they've made to give them some playing time. Amari Hutchinson came on, and Igor Jesus came on, and Hutchinson had a big miss. Jesus had a couple misses and chances to maybe actually when it struck the post on one of them, and then had a flick over the keeper that just went too high over the bar. Arnaud Calamiendo came on as well, so you're starting to see Forest have a deep squad now outside of the fullback position, outside of Aina and Nico Williams. It does feel like Forest are quite deep for attacking options. Um, and then, if something happens with Chris Wood, maybe Igor Jesus can fill in. So maybe they have a replacements for the striker option as well. But that said, this was kind of an opportunity to maybe make a stand where had you won this kind of game, maybe you would look at Forest as maybe something other than just kind of trying to get in the top four, trying to get into Europe again. Uh, lots of chatter after last week where they have that really impressive spell versus Brentford, and then the chatter coming into this was about the manager maybe having a falling out, and maybe Nuno this being Nuno's last game, uh, which to me was crazy. You think back to a year ago to this point. The talk about Forest was, can they stay up? Uh, it'll be a great job for them to not get relegated, or maybe they'd be like the last team to stay up if the promoted sides are poor, because that's where they've been the last couple of years. And Forest just had one of those special seasons and Nuno came in and just changed a little bit how they played. Now they are defensive minded, but also they got a lot of goals in a way that without really replacing anyone. Because they had Steve Cooper, and it felt like they were going to maybe go down with Steve Cooper before Nuno even joined them. And just they've been playing a better, uh, a better just brand of soccer, more attack minded, despite not having much of the ball. Chris Wood definitely loves Nuno after after the season that Chris Wood had. Um, Morgan Gibbs White has spoken about how one of the reasons why he was signed, or he signed another contract, even though Tottenham were trying to sign him early in the summer as well. That's another player that Tottenham missed out on. Was Nuno being there, being able to nurture him. Nuno was maybe there when Gibbs White was also there at Wolves, so maybe they had a relationship even before this. Uh, and to have a falling out like that is already is weird. And it feels like maybe the manager or maybe the owner wants someone else and wants maybe someone to be more attack minded. Maybe the owner is upset that they ended up not getting Champions League last season, but I think there were circumstances for why Nottingham Forest had a little bit of a stale end to their season. They had a lot of injuries. Chris Wood, Hudson Odoi, Oli Aina missed key games for them towards the latter part of the season. So and I do feel like Nuno has taken some of that criticism to heart, because it did feel like uh, they have been working on the preseason on maybe being a little bit better in possession, because the rap on Forest was just don't give them transition opportunities, and maybe you can get something versus them. Um, Here it felt like Crystal Palace tried to do that. Crystal Palace were pretty good in the first half, but the second half, I thought Forest after the subs took the game over a little bit. So maybe Palace were lucky just to kind of get out with a point. Crystal Palace are going to be competitive in every game. I can say that, but I do feel for Oliver Glasner, because I feel like Crystal Palace are just going to be happy to have a 10th or 12th, 13th 13th or 14th, whatever place finish in the league, because I don't know how many goals are going to be in the side by losing Eza. This is that said, I don't think anyone would have expected the kind of season Palace had last season after losing Olise before that. So they have been able to just kind of rebound. Maybe they have someone in waiting in the wings. There is actually a youngster that they got from Millwell, who actually his name is Esse. Different spelling, but it does sound similar. I don't know if that I don't know if that's necessarily the idea. They tried, Devaney, a midfielder, in that kind of a place, and it did not work out. So that can't necessarily be, the idea. Uh, they've been links to maybe to Jeremy, Pino, Pino? Jeremy Pino, I think, of La Liga, Villarreal, or Valencia. Maybe that's kind of the Eze replacement. They'll just kind of go from there. That would be to bring someone from a different league. I don't necessarily know if that would necessarily be like for like. I don't know much about Pino. Jeremy Pino, I think. Um, maybe it'll work. Crystal Palace have been very good when it comes to talents. Discovering talents lately. So we'll see how they're able to move on here, but uh, Palace's whole system under Glasner is being very structured, uh, being defensive minded, and being able to strike when the transition is there. And one of the main creators from that, it comes from the wingbacks being forward, and but when you do that, that does allow you to be a little bit soft at the back. But the wingbacks get forward and they're able to get them crosses in, but they'd also it's to create these spaces for those tens, whether it's Sar before it was Eze, but now it's not going to be, to create some danger and to get the ball in space and then to create from there, whether or not to find Mateta or to go for goal themselves. And it was a perfect kind of situation for Eze. And to lose him, we saw it versus Chelsea the week before. Palace's offense just dies without him. So that they get the goal from Sarr, and Mateta had a couple moments as well, but the Palace did not do much in the second half, and you do wonder a little bit where this is going to go. Personally, because Crystal Palace is also in London, I have kind of floated the idea of Christopher Nkunku. Maybe you could do a loan with Chelsea as just kind of a makeshift kind of replacement. I feel like it would be the perfect opportunity for him. Nkunku did not work out at Chelsea, but he had a lot of injuries. Apparently, he's fit now and he's just not being played. They're trying to loan him out or sell him out. Um, it wouldn't really be that big of a jump because both you're still in London. You Nkuku would have Mitchell overlapping him, so Nkuku would still have kind of the half spaces to create. I think that would be a pretty good idea, personally, but I haven't seen it floated. I haven't seen anyone kind of suggest it, so maybe I'm just kind of talking nonsense there. Um, but maybe Pirno works out. We'll have to see, or maybe Eze, the youngster from Millwall, works out. But I do feel like Palace are set to have a bit more of a recycle, a bit more of a restart than necessarily being able to build what they created last season. It could be being a naive, but that's just kind of where I see it. And then with Nottingham Forest, uh, this would be a head scratcher a little bit for Nuno. Um, it's a game where they have nearly 60% of the ball. But that said, that's fine for Palace. They 60% of the ball, but only 9 shots and only one on target. So that kind of says a lot too. Weren't able to get Chris Wood much, but again, Chris Palace is just really good at being defensive. They're really good at marking. So it's hard to play through them. Palace 287 passes, just 8 shots and four on target. Not much in the second half for them as well. So already kind of talked about a little bit there. And then that's probably it to talk about. Then we'll move on to Everton and Brighton. See how we're doing for time. Um, and Everton open up their new stadium with a new win. With a 2-0 thanks to Ilian Ndiaye and then James Garner with an unbelievable hit. And really the headline here is Jack Grealish. Jack Grealish joined left Man City and he's joined a new club. And one of the things my buddy texted was it's a real shame that Jack Grealish, there could be like a fun kind of uh, different dimension where a different kind of world where Jack Grealish, maybe he leaves Aston Villa, but he never joined like a big club. Maybe he joined like a Fulham, or maybe he joined a different kind of level, but not necessarily City's level. Where Jack Grealish has just been one of the more fun players over the last 5 years. And maybe you're kind of going to see that. Maybe you're going to see a Jack Grealish that has a little bit more freedom to be a little bit more kind of a maverick than we saw in the Pep system. It is interesting as well how Pep starts Jamie Doku in one game, doesn't really like it. He goes to Marmoush and he hooked Marmoush in, and Jack Grealish does one thing that we didn't see either Marmoush or Jamie Doku do in versus Spurs, where he gets the ball onto his left foot and he gets a very good left cross on off. Now he didn't always do that at Man City either, to be fair. But it's important too, because Weifer was trying to get him to go onto his right foot, and then Jack Grealish just kind of does a little kind of a head fake, does gets the ball onto his left, and he just gets a great cross off, and Ilian Ndiaye is right there. But the one thing to talk about here is Tioner Barry, who gets the head start instead of Beto. uh, he had a pretty good game. He doesn't necessarily get a goal, but he had a role in both of these goals. He does very well here to control a 50-50 ball play doing, and then he links with Ndiaye. Ndiaye finds some freedom to then carry the ball upfield. Ndiaye was quiet up to this point because he's being played now on the right instead of the left. Last year he was played on the left, and that's where he seemed to enjoy a lot of his freedom. Being played on the right, I don't necessarily know if he has a right foot or has a left foot or not, and it felt like it took a while for him to get going, but obviously, he gets the goal here. Uh, so Ndoye does very well to carry the ball upfield. Then he finds Dewsbury Hall, and then Dewsbury Hall finds Grealish, and then here, right when Dewsbury Hall gets the ball and he finds Jack Grealish, you actually see Ndaya and Barry both sprinting to get upfield to give Grealish something to cross something into. Um, but also Barry doesn't make the same run that Ndiaye does. He decides to run across the goal, and that's what drags Lewis Dunk to go with him, and then that leaves Ndiaye basically open for the cross, and then the cross finds him. So really good play, a really good unselfish play without the ball by this new signing that they brought in from La Liga in Barry. He looks really tall, like 6'4" or not, so similar kind of height to Beto, but from what I saw, much better feet than Beto as well, and that's not necessarily good for Beto, but that is good for Everton. And then James Garner in the early second half to make it 2-0, playing out of position because he's playing at left back instead of Mikolenko. What a finish! And again, likewise, really good play set up by Ndiaye and Barry. This comes from the other side of the field, so it's another just kind of 50-50 ball that Barry is able to control, and then he finds Ndiaye, and then Barry makes a good run in front of Ndiaye. He plays it, and then Barry does well to find a teammate. From the right side of the field, he finds Eric Bunham, and then Eric Bunham from the middle whips it over to the left side of the field to Grealish. So did a really good job of moving it from one side of the field to the other with just a couple of passes, doing it really quickly. And then that kind of creates it. And then Jack Grealish just kind of he draws two defenders onto him. They're not going to make him go to his left this time, but he draws people onto him, and that leaves James Garner completely open, and then he lays it off. And there's a lot of work still for James Garner to score this. He just has an unbelievable hit. That's where the game was. The story was about Jack Grealish, and then Ndiaye and Garner and Barry, important stars as well. But the other story in this game was about Brighton having more than enough opportunities to ruin the Hill Dickory Stadium opener. Everton gifted chances for days. Matoma had a free volley after Tokarski just overran a long ball hit over top of him. Uh, Garner slipped, and Minta had a free cross into Welbeck, and I have no idea how Welbeck falls down and doesn't score this tap in. Tarkowski's just straight past the ball to Matt O'Reilly in the box in the first half, and that needed a big Pickford save. Matt O'Reilly could have probably laid it off, or probably should have scored. He did force a pretty good Pickford save. Really good job by Pickford to recognize that to save Tarkowski. Tarkowski did not have a good game, and then in the second half, Welbeck was there was I think a handball by Dewsbury Hall, and then Welbeck on the PK is a poor PK, and Pickford's able to save that one as well. It's funny because Pickford has that water bottle everyone knows about now, and the thing to say about that is Pickford guessed right on the Leeds PK. It was just really well hit in the Monday game. Here he guesses right again, and it's not well hit, and so there you go. It was a poor PK, and if that goes in, it's 2-1 with 20 minutes to go in the game, where Brighton, it did feel like we're all over them. We're the better team, but they weren't able to get it to go in. And there you go. Everton got to enjoy their stadium opener with a opening win. And no Jorginho Rudder available for Brighton. I do think that factored in a little bit. One thing to talk about now, because I can say it now that's already happened, is Brighton do have a number 9 in the wings that they had on loan last season in the second league Bundesliga in Stefanos Zimas, who apparently played for their EFL Cup game in the Carabao Cup game yesterday. I think it will not take long for him to be their starting striker number 9. He looked his numbers looked incredible. Now again, it's hard to judge by, it's the second division in Germany, but his numbers, his overall numbers at least, people were charting and were off the charts last season as a finisher. Um, I've seen some highlights of the game, yesterday. He has he's got a good build to him. He looks stocky. He looks quick, and he had 2 really nice finishes, in that game. I don't think it'll take long for him to immediately be part of the conversation starting striker spot. Maybe Rudder kind of plays either as the 10 or plays maybe on the out wide. I don't think it'll be Welbeck. But right until that happens, maybe we'll see Brighton struggle a little bit. Brighton have done it well enough to start off the season with 6 points. In my opinion, they played well enough to beat Fulham, and then they played. I think they played well enough to at least, if nothing else, get a point in this game. And that's just not the way the cookie crumbles, I guess they can say. So it didn't happen. So that you can't just do the what ifs. But yeah, 3 big chances for the Brighton that they all missed. Everton with 272 passes, 75% accuracy, and Brighton with 400 plus and 84%. Brighton with 2.4 xG to Everton's 1.6. Everton only 11 shots and 3 on target. Brighton with 13 and 4. Um, yeah, it just kind of one of those things. Everton's not going to care. But they had their moment with the opener. Jack Grealish did not start for Leeds. Came on a little bit in the second half. They're going to need him. That at least gives them some kind of control, a little bit as well. He's always good at also positioning. He's always gonna be out wide. Um, so it makes Everton harder to play against because he keeps them wide. He makes you stretch out the pitch. I thought Barry's Lenka play and Horta play was quite good, and he was running into channels. Barry is gonna maybe help them as well. They need to get better on the ball. Maybe Dewsbury Hall didn't have his best game, but uh, and maybe Eric Bonham and Gaia need to kind of get used to the new kind of setup a little bit as well. But you look at this, and Brighton had 70% possession most of this game, even before it was out of reach. I do think they're shaky at the back. They're shaky uh they're shaky with Stalkowski and Michael Keane as their back line. In my opinion, now they get Braithwaite back. Maybe that conversation changes, but until they do, this gets a little sticky. Now Everton, I'm not going to say Everton are going to go down or anything, but I do think there's reasons for cautious optimism than not until they get Braithwaite back. Um, and then with Brighton, one of the other talking points to talk about is Carlos Baliba starts and then is subbed off at halftime, which was a bit of a surprise. And then the other thing to talk about is Minta has looked very good for them in both games, and he's unlucky not to have at least a goal or assist in both games to start. So a little unlucky there. And then we'll talk about Fulham and Man United and see how we're doing for time. I don't want to spend the rest of the podcast talking about this. I always talk about Man United and go a little bit overboard. Last week I praised them, but I tried to hold off a little bit. I tried to talk about how one of the things that I wasn't really buying was Casemiro in midfield and Bruno together. I wasn't really buying. Could Bayern really be able to do what he did versus Arsenal, where he was taking a lot of risk and it was coming off? We saw we saw that show up a little bit as well. Um, and we saw, the other thing to talk about is they've spent so much money on the front end to improve their attack, and it's almost like you're shining up. You're trying to shine a diamond, and what you're really doing is you're kind of carving up a rock. Where a lot of that money and investment really needs to go into the back or in midfield, and it's just been ignored, and it's been ignored for years. And, you've got attackers that can make a lot of 1v1 situations happen, that can make a lot of, hero moments happen, and that's been, that'll make Man United exciting. It'll be make them unpredictable, but it also will make them. Uh, It'll make them predictable in a different sense, in where you don't think that they are going to really jump up the table and all of a sudden have a surprise season where they're people are talking about them for trophies again. And I'm saying this, I had this script written down before what happened yesterday, and I will talk a minimal about what happened yesterday, where Man United did lose to Grimsby in a game that they were outplayed. They made it 2-2, and it got to penalties, and once you saw Onana was on penalties, you figured, probably it's gonna take, Grimsby just to kind of miss the goal entirely, and that basically was it. It went like 13 or 12 rounds. It went to everyone having to take, 2, twice, and, I think it was Brian Mbeumo that had the final one that, ended up missing, even, scoring the first one. But Man United went into that game. Yeah, they played a couple kids a little bit at the back, a little inexperienced there, but for the most part, it was a very veteran kind of front line. Benjamin Sesko and Cunha started. No Bruno, I guess you can say. Ugarte, I believe, got the start. Dallo and Delict. It wasn't Delict. Maybe it was Maguire. There was a lot of senior leadership in that team, and they were getting outrun. Uh, that was not really good for them either, and then when they're losing, Ruben Amorim doesn't really change from the back three, either, which continues to be a little bit of a shock. They did make it 2-0 or 2-2. Harry Maguire, saved them a little bit at the end. Harry Maguire is actually really good in that kind of role, weirdly enough, and we saw that versus Fulham, as well. Harry Maguire nearly actually scored towards the end on either a corner kick or maybe kind of a cross late in that game, where he nearly, snatched a victory. Uh, but the reason why I'm kind of going to this is Man United still have, we saw it a little bit in the Arsenal game as well, where the shape is always going to be a little bit off, for them, and the personnel, whether or not it's at the back, the wing backs, you're using a very uh, sophisticated, I guess I'll say, system that requires almost elite technicians in every kind of spot on the field. You're only going to play with two in midfield, so you need to have two in midfield that are very good at both receiving, but very good at also covering a lot of ground, and very good at also offering something in the final third. Bruno offers one of those qualities. The other, but he's lacking in the out of possession part. He's not a defensive minded midfielder. He's not going to necessarily track runners, that you would think that you would want. But he's also a number 10. He's having to play a different kind of position. You've done that because, one, you don't have anyone else that you feel like you can play next to Casemiro to do that. But two, you brought in a lot of attackers that you need to play now. You brought in Cunha, who probably is playing in the Bruno kind of position now. You're playing Mason Mount ahead of your striker, which is a bit kind of odd as well. And then you're playing, you brought in Brian Bremo, and he's playing instead of Amad Diallo. And now you're playing Diallo maybe at either at wing back, or you have to play Diego Dallo at wing back, and on the other side you're playing Patrick Dorgu, at left wing back. And I was kind of stunned when I read this, that he is left foot dominant, so playing him on the left makes sense. But when you watch him, he looks like he doesn't know how to use his left foot, and you're not seeing any kind of you're not seeing him really help out, in that kind of respect. Now he can get forward. He has some good runs to him. But in some cases, what they were doing in the first half in this Fulham game is they had Mason Mount would basically drop in, and it would try to basically isolate Patrick Dorgu, and he would basically become your left winger in that kind of respect. And they were expecting, like, the system was almost made for him in some cases, and Kenny Tata had no issues defending him at all, and even sometimes when Patrick Dorgu was getting it behind, he wasn't able to cross it. He was trying to get it back onto his right foot to cross it. Y and one of the things you've done is one of the first things that Moram did is he wanted to get a signing in to make it his own club. And before that, you didn't have anyone else, and Luke Shaw was always hurt. They were playing Diego Dallo on the other side as well, and that wasn't, or Wan-Bissaka, that wasn't always working out. Maybe it wasn't Wan-Bissaka. They didn't really have anyone to play on that side last season, so you understood making a signing in that kind of respect. But it was weird to see them target Patrick Dorgu, who uh, it doesn't really help them out. You need to have someone to keep that with to make this to make this work, you need to have someone to also have those crosses in, to at least make that work. If you're going to play someone like Benjamin Sesko, who isn't going to be a striker that scores on him, that creates by himself, he's going to need someone that needs some service for him. It's very odd. And the other thing to talk about here is they had a gem in Alvaro Carres, who was at Benfica, who was on Man United. I think he was on loan. They lost him to Madrid, and I think they did that because Patrick Dorgu, they wanted to give him kind of the runway to have that left wing back spot. That was a mistake, and so I don't know. There's been a lot of mistakes here. But anyways, just to kind of talk about this game here, a couple nice Cunha moments actually to start, but just not able to. And maybe who knows? Maybe he scores one of those two. Maybe it's not even a contest. He hits the box on one of them. He has a screamer from distance that nearly beat Leno. He gets on the end of a 70-yard pass by Bayindir. It just kind of scuffed that finish, but at least forced a pretty good save by Leno as well. It took a while for them to get going, but about like 20 minutes or so, you start to really see them actually, take control of the game. And they start to get a couple corner kicks where they look dangerous on every single corner kick. But the other thing, too, is they're able to build up where Man United cannot turn them over. Leno's being patient. He's finding Sanderberger. Sanderberg is able to just kind of turn. It felt like Fulham were able to find the extra man every single time. And just there were no issues to play through Man United. And they were able to get the ball upfield. And then from there, able to just kind of take more control of the game. Um, Fulham also it felt like we're able to press by Endear a little bit more than we saw with Arsenal, and able to force him into his mistakes. United are not able to do what they were able to do versus Arsenal, where Endear was able to find people in those Hollywood passes where they then would have the spaces open. Also, Fulham were not leaving open. That they were not doing what Calafiori does what Calafiori did in the opening week. They kept their fullbacks actually in pretty good shape. So it wasn't like easy runs were on in the back end either. So it got to a point where Fulham's kind of sat in a mid block and there weren't really any runs. Mason Mount was running again towards the ball and felt like the idea was to try to get isolate Patrick Dorgu. And again, Tete had no issues with that. I thought Mason Mount being picked for this game did not work. Maybe playing Macuna on the left and maybe actually starting Sesko would have made more sense, or maybe actually playing Bruno a little bit higher. I don't really know. But that said, there was a moment where Mason Mount did have a pretty nice flick to free in Bruno, and then that forced a decent save that led to a corner kick. And then we got some controversy on the corner kick, and that basically did lead to at least United having a PK opportunity. Uh, I think it's Calvin Bassey. He just throws Mason Mount to the ground. There's no reason to do this at all. Um, and yeah, it's probably the right call. Actually, I do think it's the right call. And there's shoving, happening in the replay for both teams, but no one's tossing someone to the ground with that kind of force. And it's not like Mason Mount even dived. Like he legitimately is thrown to the ground. It just shows how strong Calvin Bassey is, but is also not the best idea to do. And it is a shame because Calvin Bassey otherwise had a spectacular game as well. It felt like one of the reasons why Man United were kind of struggling a little bit is they would try to maybe play the ball forward, and Bassey would be a really good job of running ahead to challenge one of those 50-50s. Iwobi was kind of doing the same. Sanderberger and Lukic were kind of doing the same. They were, Anderson on the other side were doing that. They weren't afraid to play their center backs, higher up to challenge that as well. So Calvin Bassey was playing well, and then he kind of does that. So it gets to a PK, and we get to halftime, and it's still 0-0 because Bruno misses the PK. He doesn't do the hop skip thing that commentators were talking about, or at least people at halftime were talking about how maybe the ref kind of bumped into him and that put Bruno off. I don't necessarily know if that's the case. There was talk maybe the new signings that came in, maybe they've been taking PKs, and Warren wants to see that. And maybe Bruno felt pressured that way that we saw yesterday. That shouldn't be the case because Bruno probably is the best PK taker outside of Harry Maguire, which I don't need to say anything more. Harry Maguire had an unbelievable PK yesterday. I couldn't believe my mind, or I couldn't believe my eyes. Um, but anyways, so we get to a 0-0 half. Really not much in the game as far as chances go, where the keepers were really uh, caused it to do a whole lot, but it did feel like Fulham had control of the game despite the earlier chances for Man United. It felt like after that 20 minutes or so, Fulham did have control of that game, and then we get to the second half. Man United are able to at least make a little something count. So, Yeni Euro on a peak on a corner kick. A little controversy here as well. It feels like there's maybe a push in the back. I think it's on Calvin Bassey as well. So, unfortunate for him again. Uh, but after that, Fulham make changes, and after that, Fulham maybe had control in the game as far as the middle third, but they weren't really able to do anything in the final third. After this, that changed. So Raul Jimenez came on, Emos with Mo came on, and Anthony Robinson came on. And after that, Fulham start to own that left side, and that's where the goal comes from. Once Robinson comes on, he immediately starts doing overlaps. He makes forward runs that opens things up, that creates the extra man for Fulham because Brian and Bremo is not tracking back now. Um, so that leaves Fulham have a 3v2 in that kind of situation, and um, I think it's Diego Dallo that has come on instead of Ahmad Diallo, and he doesn't know who to mark. And basically, he allows a free cross to go into the box, and that's when Raul Jimenez is able to get a flick on, and that's when Smith Rowe is able to get on the end of it as well. But before that, there's really good control. Fulham win the ball back, and they play a pass that's kind of risky a little bit, but it's really good control by Santaberga. And then Yoel Jimenez as well has a nice little control. He makes a run. He has an early cross in that's defended, but the ball falls to Diego Dallo, and he can't clear it. So Fulham are able to continue the attack. And then from here, Robinson again makes a run ahead of Alex Iwobi, and that just freezes Dallo. Dallo doesn't know what to do, and that run is really important as well because that run basically it draws Delict over, and that creates that avenue to send the ball into Jimenez's path unimpeded. Across by Iwobi, finds Jimenez in the box, and he has maybe a little flick, or maybe the ball even misses him. But Jimenez is drawing the attention of a defender as well, and right behind him is no one because Amos Smith Rowe is unmarked by no one. Bruno has lost track of him in the box. And that's what you get when you're playing a guy that's not really used to being a defensive minded midfielder. And 1-1, and then from there, Fulham controlled things. United shape again looked off there, and then Amore made changes. He brought Ugarte, Sesko, Dallo on, Maguire on, and to me, it felt like it had the opposite effect of making things better. If not, it made things worse. Sesko wasn't offering link up play much. He wasn't offering runs in behind. United couldn't really get control of the ball to actually use his dominance in the air in the box. Ugarte came on, couldn't win the ball back, couldn't really make a pass, and it felt like again, Bruno it just felt like Man United were just kinda being outnumbered in midfield again. But and then it felt like, Fulham just had a lot of the ball in Man United's half, towards the end of the game, and they were playing some nice stuff. Maybe the only kind of, criticism you can say is they got too cute at times. Lots of clever 1-2s, quick thinking, quick turns. Man United's back line were defending shadows. Jimenez just seemed to offer way more link up ability. There's so many clever 1-2s and layoffs by Jimenez and Smith Rowe. Harry Wilson came on in that second half as well. It just felt like Fulham were just having fun to create opportunities to get a shot off, and they just weren't taking the shot for some reason. They were trying to maybe have the perfect goal than necessarily just force Bayindir into making a save. Uh, and so that's Man United were able to escape. And then yesterday, everyone saw what happened there. Uh, the thing to talk about is one, yes, the players probably deserve some blame a little bit there going into being outrun a little bit by the League Two side in many respects. After it got it was 2-0 at halftime. It actually could have been 3-0. They got lucky that an offsides call wasn't was called when I don't think it was. And then there was actually a moment for it to maybe even be 4-0 when someone was played into the box where they just weren't able to get the shot off. But it just felt like Man United were being outrun by a League Two side or a fourth division side, I think is what they said. And he Borum did make some changes. He brought on Embremo. He brought on Bruno Fernandez. Uh, he actually brought on the main guys, and they were able to brought on Amad Diallo. They were able to get something back, and then they were able to actually get back in the game with the Harry Maguire chance, and even Benjamin Sesko had a chance to even win it at the very end. He just missed. But a lot of those goals in the first half were just one, just I think it's Amad Diallo actually loses the ball, and then Just uh, Onana has a poor try to attempt to save, and then Onana gets caught defending maybe a cross into the box, and it just kind of goes over his head for that one as well. I think Man United lost this because Ruben Amorim played Onana in this game, and frankly, it's gotten to a point where I don't think Man United fans ever want to see him again. Maybe you don't really trust Bayindir. Bayindir hasn't really been that convincing, at least on set pieces. You can't really. There hasn't been a whole lot for him to save, so I don't know how much you can really go at him there. But obviously, everyone knows what happened with Arsenal, and here, one thing to say with the Fulham is it felt like Fulham were going to score on every single corner kick they got in that first half, and he doesn't look convincing. Defending those kind of things, and whether or not the set pieces, maybe it's just kind of balls into the box. Man United probably have to go get a keeper now. I don't think they probably have to sell Onana after what happened yesterday. And frankly, Amorim by playing Onana now, it's a League Four side. I don't know how much you can really blame it on that, but that probably is what really did it. Also, if nothing else, once they got the PKs, maybe you could have subbed Onana. I don't know. Onana's never really been known for being good on PKs. It's gotten really, really toxic. It it's hard not to say that he probably, if not is going to get sacked, he's probably, got a hot seat now. They've spent a lot of money, in the summertime. You've got Gary Neville saying he thinks Man United are gonna be 4th, a 4th place team, to finish the season. Um, I a lot of this was after the Arsenal game where they did play, pretty well. But that said, they played well, but didn't really force. No, they did force Ray into some saves in the second half, but they played well. But at the same time, that's that when you think of Man United, you think about something more than just that. And apparently they always give Arsenal a hard game. So yeah, verdict's still out. Obviously on them, it doesn't feel like they've recruited the best thing. Because to me, I feel like they could improve on that left back, and the problem is they've just bought a left back in, and that's one of Amorum's first signings. Ugarte hasn't really worked out. Uh, that's a little bit on my end as well. I thought that would have been better. But the other thing too is this team has no legs in them. You've got I shouldn't say that. You've got Cunha and Bremo. But it's just weird how you're playing Mason Mount in some of these. I'm looking at this and I just don't see a team that can be as direct. Now, you can Mateus Cunha wants the ball at his feet, and then he can be direct, dribbling. But he's not. I don't know him of him making runs in behind and being direct that kind of way, being unselfish that kind of way. You have Garnacho and you had Rashford, and you've gone away from that because of Amorim and because you brought in someone like that. I think that's been a big mistake as well. And now it looks like they're thinking maybe they're going to sell Kobe Mano as well. Mano apparently had one of the few that actually had a good game yesterday. So I don't know where you go with Man United in that kind of respect, and that's all I'll say really about them. Um, I I I can say that I hyped them up a little bit last week, because of what they did for Arsenal. But I went back and listened to it again. I was still hesitant to say I don't know how much I buy this. Repeating itself or being something long term because I talked about how the keeper situation. I didn't know how good Bindier could repeat that. I talked about how Bruno in midfield, next to Casemiro by themselves, how sustainable that would be. I talked about how I didn't know how the new signings, how that would all fit together, or Mason Mount being played together. I did bring those points up, and we so and the other thing too, I actually brought up versus Arsenal is again, you're trailing, you need a goal, and you're not going away from your back three. You're still playing with three center backs. We saw that actually in this game as well. They're down a goal and they still didn't really change. They're still playing a back three. I think they actually took off maybe a center back and they actually were playing like Diego Dallo almost like part of the back three, but they still had three in the back. It is he won't change from his system. He won't just go to a 4-3-3. Or he won't just play with a back four where you have just the two back there and you can use your fullbacks to actually be an extra man up ahead. Uh, even against a League Two 5 or League 4 side. Um, that that's worrying, to say the least. But anyways, I'm sure there'll be more times to talk about Man United in other areas, and then with Fulham. One thing to talk about them is they went into this game. They started with Castagna, who's a fullback, further ahead, and to me it suggests they're maybe short on attacking bodies. Now they have Harry Wilson that came off the bench, uh, but Adama and ESR you still have Adama Traore, but apparently he's injured now. They don't have Reece Nelson anymore. The apparently Arsenal have him back. Maybe they can try to go for him again in the transfer window before maybe do another loan or try to maybe actually try to buy him. But it does feel like they are a little short for bodies, and I think Marco Silva has talked about that as well. Rodrigo Munoz gets the start instead of Raul Jimenez, and I thought Jimenez was actually the better player. Maybe Munoz is more kind of a finisher, but at least in this case, when you needed someone to just kind of link up a little bit better, it felt like Jimenez was more of a better fit in that respect. Lukic and Berga played pretty well. Josh King getting a start instead of Emo Smith. Both players played well. Josh King made a couple dangerous runs in that first half where he got into pretty good areas. But Smith Rowe, gets the goal and he played well when he came on as well. And then Anderson and Bassi, that's a pretty good partnership. Center back partnership. And then Tede as well. And then Sessegnon got the start and then Robinson came on for him. But when Fulham had that back four, and Tede, Anderson, Bassi, and Robinson, that's very, very good. They're not gonna have issues as far as, fighting, the bottom at least. They'll be, top 10, maybe challenging, for something if they can get a couple signings in. Marco Silva is very underrated coach. I keep trying to underrate him. I'm not gonna do that anymore. I keep being impressed in how good they are at playing through pressure f they don't always have the best, final third, end product of the final third actions, but they never have issues keeping the ball. To me, that comes down to coaching. I don't necessarily know if all of these players would be able to do what they do to take the risks that they do. They're pretty good on the eye when it comes to at least keeping the ball. Now, again, sometimes it can be a hard watch because they don't always lead to chances when they have good possessions and they are able to build up. But that can be improved with better players, you can say. And then with Brentford and Aston Villa, one of the kind of not much to talk about. Okay, I'm not that bad. Uh, Not much to talk about the game in this case as well. Aston Villa took forever to get going, but they did wake up in the second half after a couple of changes. Brentford get the early goal with Django Adasara, a debut goal. They needed this. They needed to have someone with some legs and some pace, and he basically scores this because of those legs and pace, where he's able to just beat Tyrone Mings into a sprint. Um, and then maybe gets a little fortunate where his first shot is blocked, but ball basically follows back to him, and he's able to get the tap in. Brentford needed that because after that, they went into a strict back five, and there went any kind of ability to get the ball upfield, and they played a lot of this game without the ball. I think they had the least possession of any side on the weekend. They had the lowest passes of any side on the weekend. They defended well. Aston Villa also did a pretty good job of helping out with that as well. Couldn't really get Ollie Watkins going. I guess that helped. That's good for Brentford fans. Brentford fans probably were rooting for Ollie Watkins to have a stinker, as Ollie Watkins was a Brentford player once. Konsa I think was as well, though Konsa wasn't able to play because of the red card last week. Uh, this was a case, I think, of Aston Villa being incomplete. It's big for Brentford to get that first win after not really being that competitive versus Nottingham Forest, and after having all that turnover and change. Seeing all those players leave, and seeing the coach leave, and the other thing too is the bring in the set piece coach, and Brentford. The first corner kick they had to defend last week, they conceded on the set piece. So they needed to find something to change the momentum, change the narratives. The other thing to talk about here is they get Damsgaard back. Damsgaard was very good in the few moments that they were able to have the ball. In fact, this could have been 2-0 going into halftime with a wonderful Damsgaard hit, but it was ruled out for maybe a foul on the keeper. I don't really know the rules anymore because Arsenal were able to do this by Deer, and Pierre Collins wasn't able to do it to Emi Martinez. Ashton Villa were sluggish, and it felt like they tried Morgan Rogers on the left and John McGinn on the right. I thought they were wasted. There's really not much creativity there. There was an injury to Babaku Kamara in this game, and that allows McGinn maybe to play a little bit deeper. And what they did is they brought on Amy Buendia. They played him and maybe Morgan Rogers almost like double tens. After that change, they were able to get Morgan Rogers more threatening, more involved, to at least force Kelleher into making a couple saves. But that was pretty much it. The other things to talk about here is Coyote put in quite a good shift at right back. Collins and Vandenberg did just enough to kind of stop some crosses. Keller, made the saves that he needed. The 3 points is all they really wanted. Jordan Henderson gets a start, and he played well. For the most part, he was hooked in the second half, but he at least did enough to where Brentford again had a lot of this game without the ball, and I think a lot of that was just retreating way too early because you've got that back five all the way back, and at one point you had Watatara, being part of that back five. Uh, there's just there's there's no ability to win the ball back and then to advance it upfield. In Brentford were just clearing the ball to empty grass, whereas Villa were just able to recycle over and over again. So over the course of a season, I don't think that's sustainable. They but and the other thing to talk about with Brentford is Igor Thiago. Had the nice flick for the goal, but otherwise, I thought he looked kind of rough a little bit too. A couple heavy touches when he, in the second half, Brentford were able to get forward a couple of times. He wasn't making the right calls. A couple heavy touches. He looked kind of, a little slow on his feet as well. And it does feel like Brentford are linked to maybe bringing in a different attacker. You get Wiesa in this side, and you have Shada and Wiesa, and you have Watatara, and you have Damsgaard. That's enough for them to stay up, in my opinion. They don't. I don't know if Igor Thiago can lead them, so it feel like they may be linked to someone else. Maybe someone at Dortmund. It looks like Maxil Beer could maybe be someone to come in and that would be a front line of Shada, Beer, and Watatara. Beer is not necessarily someone that's going to make these runs behind, but he can be more of a kind of a false nine kind of playmaker. At least what I've seen from Dortmund, he's got a great finish on him. He hasn't really worked out at Dortmund, but before that, I think he's like 6'2". He's really tall. He's got a really good finish on him. I think he's known for striking the ball, having really good ball striking. Uh, who knows? That could be really exciting. But we'll have to see if that pans out or not. And with Aston Villa, it's a club that's been hurt by this PR stuff, PSR stuff. Newcastle as well. Um, and I get the idea you don't want endless spending. But at that said, you've got clubs that are trying to get that point. They're trying to build their way up to join those at the top to be a Champions League club, and they're not able to sustain it because to do that requires attracting players, and attracting players requires you to have higher wages, and it feels like their wage bill is what's keeping them from being able to do this. And so the profit sustainability stuff, to me, it allows the biggest clubs with already the most visibility to other countries and other markets to endlessly spend more than any people trying to catch up to them. And to me, that part of it feels a farce to me. Um, and so I feel like Aston Villa are struggling about that. They're not able to they had to sell one of their own in Jacob Ramsey to Newcastle because it's pure profit because that's one of their players, one of the youngster players that they brought in. Um, but they it feels like they're missing something here. They missing Rashford or whatnot. To me, the wide players, the wings, aren't good enough to where they need to be. I don't feel like the fullbacks are either. They've had 4 or 5 seasons in a row with Digna and Matty Cash now, and not to say that they can't be squad players, but I feel like you're not you're kind of missing a little bit where Unai Emery could maybe do a little bit more with some better quality, a little bit in the side. That's all I'll kind of say. This game, they also were without Konza. That probably factored in a little bit as well. Mings and Paul Torres, got a little burned for pace a little bit with Watatar. Maybe that didn't happen with Konza. Um, that's just and they lose Kamara to injury, but McGinn played actually well, but in the deeper kind of spot in my opinion. But they need to find some kind of creativity somewhere. They looked better when Amy Brandia came on. To that said, they also have Evan Gezerud of Nice that they apparently brought in the summer. Maybe he can kind of contribute for them a little bit as well. It does feel like they've been linked to maybe another attacker to help out with Ollie Watkins, but we'll see. We'll see what they're able to do. I think they've sold Liam Bailey as well. That was another kind of an important kind of wide player that had goals and assists as well. So Aston Villa to me are in a very weird situation because they weren't that far away from being a Champions League, maybe being in the semifinals with Arsenal. Who knows what would have happened with Unai Emery versus Arsenal? That would have been kind of fun. Um, and to now, they lose Marcus Rashford. Now they would have lost him anyways. I think Rashford ended up actually having an injury after that Villa game, after that PSG game, anyways. Um, but Dan Daniel Mallon, I guess, is another that they brought in, but he doesn't always start for them. But it feels like they've gone from, being a top four kind of Champions League kind of contending side. They just missed out last year. It feels like it's harder for them now to sustain that. Where it feels like this could possibly be a year where they step back, but still some time in the window to maybe fix that. We'll have to see, but yeah, they were rough. I mean, they had nearly 80% of the ball, 76 to 24, and just 17 shots and two on target. And it took forever for them to get going. A lot of that 17 actually was in the second half, so they were better in the second half. But again, the way that they're playing this, I feel like Morgan Rogers isn't being used in the spot that he was last season either. They're trying him on the left, and it wasn't feel like he was able to be influential on the left either. So that's kind of where we are there. And then we'll get to Burnley and Sunderland. The promoted battle, I guess you can say, the 6 pointer. It is the Josh Cullen show. Josh Cullen, gets the first goal, and then set up by Jaden Anthony with a lovely little flick in that setup there, and then Jaden Anthony actually gets on the end of a lovely Josh Cullen through ball that's able to find him. It's a really good finish by Anthony as well. Sunderland were not bad, to be fair, but Burnley needed this. Burnley were the better side last season in the championship. Sunderland, got through here, I think, by winning the playoff. Uh, Burnley got here by just being incredibly good, incredibly defensively good in the championship last season, and we'll see if they're able to just kind of maintain that or not. Sunderland. To me, the surprise about this is Sunderland are kind of. It seems like they're built to be on the counter with really nice pace in the back line, and here they had some moments to maybe get that first goal with Mbaye and then Toby or Tala. Forced pretty good saves by the keeper. But also they lose their stars center back from this last week to injury in Ballard. Maybe that impacted them a little bit. But the surprise to me is they had 58% possession here. Two big chances apiece, but they had 530 passes. So uh, you know, once Burnley have the ball, maybe they're sitting back, they're not really pressing. You understand that, but Sunderland were not bad with the ball, 86% accuracy, and they were creating chances with that. Now, 9 shots and only one on target, that could maybe be a little bit of the problem as well. But two big chances apiece, this possibly could have ended 2-2, or possibly could have ended in a draw. Um, so I don't necessarily know. It's Sunderland away from home, so Burnley, getting a win at home is important as well. One thing you can say about all three promoted sides, they already have a win. We weren't able to say that a year ago, so that's one thing to talk about there as well. That's maybe all to talk about. Scott Parker back in the league and able to get a win, and club hasn't done a lot of splashy signings. They haven't done what Sunderland has done. But that said, they have players that have played together more. So which one is better? We'll have to see. If the back line can be Premier League level, maybe that'll be okay. And then Sunderland did go out and splash some money. Granit Xhaka, um, and Adingra. But which one favors over the other? And then we get to Bournemouth and Wolves, the Gary O'Neill derby. and Bournemouth win a 1-0 early goal with thanks to Anthony Semenyo. Um, and it could have been more actually. Semenyo ended up crashing into the post on another one. Tati Gomez kind of red card early in the second half, just kind of killed any kind of momentum. Uh, Terrific through ball by David Brooks actually led to the red card as well. And then a couple moments for Wolves maybe make it to. I think Tyler Adams actually had a really nice hit that smacked the crossbar. Wolves just look a little. They look a little struggling right now. And it looks like Newcastle trying to go for Larson. Larson did get a start this game and did have a header that at least forced a pretty good save. They only had 6 shots though, and that was the one on target was the save. Bournemouth with 14 shots and now on target as well. Bournemouth with majority of the possession, probably what you'd expect. And it just feels like with Wolves, the squad is thin. But Vita Pereira did make some magic last year. But again, they've lost a lot with Mateus Cunha. And then Larson being heavily rumored out to Newcastle. They have been linked to bring in a striker from Genk, but I don't know. I don't know what else they can really do. And then with Bournemouth, we got a debut from Adley of Bayern Leverkusen to got some minutes. Looks to maybe be their Django Watatara replacement. He looks pretty good as well. So that's where we are for the midweek roundup. And so thank you for tuning in. And until then, you stay squatting and stop recording.